And then the big thunderstorm, that was exciting. Did you guys have a thunderstorm down here?
John, was the meeting properly warned?
Yes, Oscar, it was.
Thank you. Board members, any adjustments to the agenda?
None here.
Seeing none. Chair's remarks. I would like to congratulate Frost Street on a successful block party on Sunday. I was able to go for a few minutes and it seemed like a lot of fun. I also want to congratulate Rachel Shields Ebersole for becoming the new executive director of the Brattleboro Regional Chamber of Commerce, and also to thank the outgoing director, Kate O'Connor, who is here with us today, for many years of service to the chamber. And finally, I'd like to remind people that if you're participating on Zoom, please use the raise hand button if you want to speak on a topic, and then Seth will know that you're waiting. And that's all for me. John, manager's comments?
Yeah, a couple things. Tonight, the town of Brattleboro recognizes two weeks. So one is the National Public Works Week, which is celebrated this year from May 17th through May 23rd. And this week serves as an opportunity to acknowledge and thank the dedicated employees of the Department of Public Works who work each day to maintain our roads, water systems, wastewater infrastructure, public facilities, stormwater systems, fleet operations, and overall community safety and quality of life. Public works professionals are often the first to respond during storms and infrastructure failures, while also providing the essential day-to-day services that keep our community functioning. On behalf of the town, we extend our appreciation to the hardworking staff of the Department of Public Works for their continued commitment, professionalism, and service to the Brattleboro community. And we also are grateful to recognize this week EMS Week. And so I also want to take a moment to thank the dedicated EMS professionals that are serving the town of Brattleboro. Every day, our EMS providers respond to the community's most urgent needs with skill, compassion, and professionalism. Whether it's a medical emergency, a moment of crisis, or a call for help at someone's most vulnerable time, they consistently deliver high-quality care under pressure. The past few years have brought significant changes and increased demands to EMS, and through it all, our teams have remained committed to serving the community with excellence. Please join me in recognizing and thanking our EMS personnel for the critical role they play in protecting the health and safety of our town. I wanted to remind everyone there will be a local concerns meeting for the Fairground Road Sidewalk Project on May 21st at 6 p.m., both on Zoom and in person at the Wyndham Regional Career Center, Cusick Conference Room at 80 Atwood Street. The meeting is an opportunity to share comments and concerns to better inform the plans for a sidewalk on Fairgrounds Road running between Red Clover Commons and the high school parking lot. And finally, tonight, the town clerk asked me to remind everyone that dog licenses are still available at the town clerk's office. The warrant and list of unlicensed dogs will be submitted to the select board at the June 2nd meeting. After that, the animal control officer may begin issuing tickets. That's it.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
All right, select board comments. I'll start on the right. Isaac?
Good evening. I realized that at our last meeting, we didn't talk about the select board retreat that we recently had, and just wanted to thank the planning director and also town manager for putting that together. And at that retreat, we came up with 5 priorities, which we'll be talking about, I believe, at an upcoming meeting. But just wanted to acknowledge that we had that retreat. We talked about capping the increases in our budget, about economic development, alternative revenue generation, stormwater, utility, and road infrastructure, sidewalks. These are things that we said that we would like to prioritize as a board.
Thanks, Isaac. Amanda?
Yeah, on behalf of National Public Works Week, I drove down Greenleaf Street to Route 9 today on my way in, and wow, it's all lined. It's beautiful. I mean, there's something so fresh about nice pavement and fresh lines that just makes you feel proud of your town. So thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Peter?
Yeah, good.
Nell?
Sorry for scooting in under the wire.
It's actually over the wire.
All right, excellent. We're going to open public comment now. This is an opportunity for anybody in the public who wishes to speak about an item that is not otherwise on today's agenda. When you're called upon, please approach the mic, state your full name, and address all comments and questions to the chair. Tim.
Timothy Alden Belknap, downtown resident, taxpayer, and voter. Thank you for this opportunity. First, I want to thank everyone who signed this petition and everyone who has spoken up about this issue. Regardless of where people stand, the level of community engagement shows how deeply Brattleboro residents care about our town, our neighbors, our future. We're here tonight because many residents believe that the recent 3-2 vote to request an increase in general assistance motel capacity from 117 rooms to 137 is the wrong direction for Brattleboro. It's not about a lack of compassion. Brattleboro has consistently done more than its share to support people in crisis, but compassion must be balanced with fairness, sustainability, and fiscal responsibility. Town staff estimated that police, fire, and EMS responses connected to the GA motel locations will cost approximately $646,000 in fiscal year 2025 alone. When the number of GA rooms was previously reduced, emergency calls dropped by 11%, 135 fewer calls each year. That meant first responders had more time and resources to serve the entire community. At the same time, Brattleboro depends on meals, rooms, and alcohol tax revenue, roughly $500,000 annually, to help fund essential town services. Every room removed from the local economy for the GI program affects that revenue and puts more pressure on taxpayers. The people who signed this petition are asking for balance. We're asking the board to reverse this vote, establish a fair and proportional gap on placements, and provide a full and transparent accounting of the financial impact before any future expansion is considered. Brattleboro represents about 2% of Vermont's population. We should not be carrying 10 to 19% of the state's emergency housing burden. We all want humane solutions to homelessness, but the responsibility for solving a statewide issue cannot continue to fall disproportionately on one small town and its taxpayers. Thank you for your time and listening to the concerns of 211 residents who signed the petition in a five-day period by visiting petitions.com/Brat Motel Limit. May I approach the bench?
Please.
These are copies for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who'd like to speak? Yes, Dick. And then Kate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dick DeGray, I think District 8. Couple of things. Obviously, I haven't been around for a while, but an update on what the status is of the audit and where we are with that. I certainly haven't heard anything about that. And two, a comment. I couldn't get to the charter revision first meeting. And I did speak with Kate before the meeting, but I want to get on the public record of, after town meeting, I read several comments that people were somewhat dismayed about the Australian ballot votes that were taken on a couple of the items that were up. I am an advocate and strong advocate, and I hope that all of you are, because you're going to get a crack at that charter, is to say any monetary issues that the town votes on should be done in Australian ballot. People browbeat people, they try to intimidate people, they hold it against them for the way that they vote when they stand up and vote if they don't agree with them. When I go into the voting booth in November or August or March, I'm in that booth all by myself. And the only people who know how I voted are people I choose to tell if I choose to tell them. And more often than not, I don't, because it's my personal business. And I can't figure out for the life of me why we don't vote at town meeting on every financial matter by paper ballot, Australian ballot. I think it's important. I think trying to intimidate people, and they do, because I've been around long enough. I've seen it at the district meeting for the school board. I've seen it at town meeting when we used to vote on the town school budget. And I think it's inappropriate, and I think it's intimidating to a lot of people that truly don't vote their conscience because they have to stand up. I think you should be able to vote by paper ballot, and I hope that that gets put in the charter. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. John, do we have any new info on the audit?
A little bit. Well, as you know, we went out for an RFP like 3 times to find somebody who would respond to it. We finally did engage and contract with an audit company, and they have worked us into their schedule, which I'm sure is very full. They have started the audit this week, and we expect to have it done in a few weeks. Really no further update. Bonnie is going to be in the meeting later on tonight, and she may have even better information on that, so you could ask her that again if you want to see if she's got anything to add.
Great, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Anyone else in the room? Yes, Kate.
Everybody, Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I just want to follow up on Dick's point about the charter. The Charter Revision Commission is going to meet again next Thursday, May 28th at 6:15 right here in this room, and we welcome any and all public participation. So thank you. Oh, and we're on the town website if you want to see the agenda and the meeting minutes for prior meetings, and BCTV as all the videos of prior meetings. And you can also zoom in, so please participate.
Thank you, Kate. Seth, do we have? Kurt, are you there?
He's unmuted.
Yeah. Kurt, we're not hearing you. Well,
Kurt, if you have headphones plugged into your computer, that might be part of the issue.
all right, well, I see another hand up. Let's go to Neil, and then we'll try Kurt at the end, and then move on.
Unmute. How about that?
Hear you.
Now we got it. Okay, thanks, John. I'm just curious that we had that 3-2 vote to up the number of motel rooms. And I wonder what the current status of that is, whether the state has been, DCF has been notified, whether they have started using them, whether they are filling them with any of the Brattleboro needed people, as was the original intent. So if you could just give me a quick update on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry, Neil. Yes.
Sorry.
John, where do we, I know you communicated the substance of the motion to the state.
Yep. Yes, I've communicated with the state the motion that the board passed at their last meeting. They expressed some concerns, which I've shared with the board. Particularly, the one that comes to mind is with the state overall looking like they're winding the program down. They're concerned, there was some concern that if additional rooms are opened up and made available in Brattleboro, that could under-resource other areas of the state. And they wanted me to understand that it would likely mean that people from other parts of the state would be moved to motel rooms in Brattleboro if you know, by impacting that, by doing that policy, basically. So really, I think they're still waiting to see how things shake out with the legislation that's being considered right now at the state legislature, and we'll probably know more or hear more after that gets finalized. So.
Great, thank you, John.
Yep.
And the board will certainly be keeping an eye on how things develop.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. All right, let's try Kurt one more time. Okay. All right, well, we're going to move on from public participation to the consent agenda. John?
Yep, we have 9 items on the consent agenda tonight. If you approve this agenda, you'll be approving the renewal of a first and third class liquor license for Sage's Pub located at 6 Flat Street. You'll be approving the renewal of a tobacco license and tobacco substitute endorsement permit for Smoke and Munch at 707 Putney Road. You'll be approving the naming of a new private road off Quails Hill Road to be known as C2 Way. You'll be authorizing the award of a $283,354 contract to GPI Construction for the final phase of interior and exterior work at Brooks Library. You'll be authorizing an agreement with L&D Safety Marking Corporation for long line striping services on town roads. You'll be authorizing and ratifying the settlement of the matter of Lepisto versus Brattleboro based on advice of counsel and VLCT, providing the town funds used for the settlement shall not exceed the deductible amount. You'll be authorizing the $1,578,000 award of the Pleasant Valley Redundant Water Storage Tank Project to Statewide Aquastore, Inc. of East Syracuse, New York, and filing of an amendment to an existing drinking water state revolving fund loan agreement for additional project funding. You'll be approving a parade permit for the AIDS Project of Southern Vermont's annual AIDS Walk on Sunday, May 23rd from 10 a.m. to noon on Main Street sidewalks. And you'll be announcing a vacancy on the Brattleboro Housing Partnership's Board of Commissioners for a 5-year term, and interested applicants can apply on the town website or at the town manager's office.
Thank you, John. Does anyone on the board wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Yes. I think we're going to have to move on, unfortunately. Okay, then I would accept a motion from a member of the board.
I'll motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, Peter has moved to accept the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And that is 5-0. Motion carries. Okay. Unfinished business, item A, records retention policy. John, do I turn this over to Hannah?
Yeah,
Or-
Hannah put this together, and we have a kind of a draft motion in there, but I think after you hear from her, you may want to make that more specific.
I'll just say that draft motion says to accept the policy. There is no policy yet. This is
Okay.
asking for your guidance in order
Thank
to
you.
draft one. So, I was asked to prepare this over a year ago, and it's taken until now to get this up for you. But there were some concerns raised at one point about records retention, specifically as it relates to text messages and things like that. And looking at that, it became clear that there's an opportunity to adopt some records retention schedules to reduce the amount of data that we need to store indefinitely in order to comply with the Public Records Act. We can only adopt schedules that have been approved by the state archivist. There is a complete list of all of the schedules at the web address that's in the memo. Our proposal for now would be to adopt 3 main ones, which would be administrative policy records, operational records, and transitory records. And this would cover things like those emails you get when you schedule an Outlook calendar appointment, or I know a lot of people in town government like to use the thumbs up function on emails, and like stuff about, oh, let's move this meeting back an hour, like nothing substantive. This mostly applies to the records that are created around the creation of important documents. And these policies lay out different timelines for destroying those records. It can be as little as I think there was one where, you know, if we're getting magazines from like trade publications for, you know, stuff about public works or parks or whatever, there's no obligation to then keep those, even though they were acquired in the course of agency business. They are technically a public record. Sort of eliminates the need to keep superfluous documents like that. And we can, of course, adopt more schedules. That's just more education and training for the staff. And so that's why our recommendation would be to start with these 3. And through these 3, you could address the use of text messaging, instant messaging, cell phones, by creating a policy that limits when and how those should be used in order to fall under these categories so that they don't need to be maintained indefinitely as public records.
Great. Thank you, Hannah. Members of the board with questions? I'll start on the left. Nell?
I appreciate your comments, Hannah, because they helped me better understand what I had read, especially the point about additional schedules creating more time and training for staff. If the recommendation is to start with 3 and see how that works, and if there's any need to adopt more, I think that's fine.
And let me just, there's some, it's probably the AC, the noise in the room. If everyone can speak extra loud, I think that would be great.
And I'll just say also that this was sent to all of the department heads, and they were asked for feedback, and there wasn't any recommendation or request to add additional schedules, so.
Great. Peter, any questions?
You know,
comments?
I don't have any questions, just sort of I guess, a statement. I mean, it seems like a lot of nitpicky kind of work here, and kind of digging down. So, I mean, whatever your recommendation is, I'm apt to.
Yeah, this isn't really like, there's no affirmative obligation to destroy records if you've adopted these policies. It just allows you to.
Right.
After a certain amount of time and in certain circumstances, so that, because, you know, even data storage is not free, it's not unlimited. You know, if we can limit what we need to be saving, then that is helpful.
I would trust our town attorneys and everybody you've asked what they need when they need it, so I will trust that system.
Thank you. Amanda?
No comments.
Isaac?
Same.
I have a couple questions, and a lot of this applies to town departments, but it also does apply to the 5 of us as the select board, right?
Yes, this would apply to any public record that falls under these categories, which again are really broad, you know, like all press releases you save until the end of the calendar year and then one more year. So every press release that comes out in 2026 gets saved until January 1st, 2028, and then we don't need to save it anymore because it's not relevant at that point. So these are sort of broad, general things that apply across town government. There are, if you look at the records retention schedules, some that are more specific to subparts of different bodies that, you know, if there was something you were looking for more about select board specific stuff, I think there is a GRS that might be a little bit more tailored to that. But again, this is really not trying to eliminate or destroy any substantive records. It's just trying to call back the immense volume of records that get generated and don't necessarily have any value or need for long-term storage.
Okay, great. So just 2 specific questions that always come up for me when I'm thinking about this stuff. The question of using like a messaging platform where messages automatically delete, for example, is that?
I would strongly recommend against that.
Certainly.
Most of that will be covered in the transitory record schedule, which applies to things like correspondence about setting a meeting, or, you know, stuff that a lot of the stuff that would be covered in like those exceptions to the open meeting law about what you guys can communicate outside of the meeting would probably fall in this transitory record category. And so that's why the recommendation would be to adopt that schedule in particular, and then to craft a policy that specifies that no one should be using a messaging service or anything like that that automatically deletes messages for anything that doesn't fall under one of these categories. And if they do, the timing of deleting that would have to comply with the times set out in these policies.
Thank you. And then my other question is around, what about documents? I'm just trying to tease out for select board members so we know what our obligations are. What about a record that I create for myself that's like my notes for what I want to say at tonight's meeting, or a draft of an idea I have. Are those records, if they never come before the body, are those things that I have to preserve and could have to show people if it was requested?
Yeah, theoretically.
Okay.
Technically, every document that is acquired or produced in the course of your business as select board members is public record. And that doesn't, like if we're on a 5-minute break and you text your partner at home to say, oh, the meeting's gonna run late, that's, yes, that's about what's going on, but it's not about the business of the select board. That's about you communicating with someone about what is happening in your life as it relates to that. But it's anything where, a member of the public is texting you and asking you like, oh, what about this policy? Like stuff like that is all public records.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Any comments or questions from the public on the policy? Seeing none, it sounds like we won't be making a motion tonight.
Nope.
Well, I would
But
like
the
guidance
guidance-
on whether or not you would like to include those recommendations for a policy and which schedules you would like to adopt.
So the recommendation in the memo is to start with the big three that are included. That's my inclination. How does the board feel about that?
I'm good with that.
Same here.
Okay.
And if you want to adopt those schedules, I suppose you could make that motion and then we can craft a policy around it, but
Okay.
that's
Would
up to
someone
you.
like to make a motion to adopt those three schedules?
I can motion to adopt, is there specific language? Or can we just say, we'll,
Adopt those three, the
Yeah, as
schedules as
presented.
presented.
I will make a motion to adopt those three schedules.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
5-0. All right, thank you, Hannah. Okay. Unfinished business B, discussion of our rules of procedure. So I'm gonna give a little structure to this by describing the three possible alterations that I heard at our retreat or that were mentioned to me separately. Those are to remove the new time limit procedure that we created at the beginning of the year. The second one is a possible change to our procedure for removing things from the consent agenda to require more than one board member. So for example, to require a majority vote to remove something from consent. And the third is a possible ban on the use of cell phones at the select board table by the board members. So let's take those in order, and then if anyone else from the board has something else they want to consider on this topic, that would be germane. So first on my list is, do we wish to remove the time limit, the 9:45 time limit and unanimous consent procedure from our rules and procedures? And it would make sense to start this with a motion if anyone desires to make a motion.
I would move to remove the 9:45 limit on our meetings.
Okay, Nell has moved to remove the 9:45 PM time limit from our rules of procedure. Well, let's go around the table. Nell, do you have any?
To me, it's not saying that the meetings have to go past 9:45. It's saying that we don't need unanimous consent to continue the meetings past that. Anybody can still make a motion at any time to adjourn, and we vote on it the same way that we would prior to this. I think the way that our April 21st meeting went showed the level of disruption and also fallout in terms of the relationship between the board and the public that can allow. So that's how I feel about this. I think that if anyone were to say at any point on the board, I have to work at 6 a.m., it's 11 p.m., I would at least be cognizant of that as an individual. I would hope the rest of us would be. And I think we've had some discussions surrounding how the agenda committee is going to try to make our agendas more manageable and realistic that would ideally actually address the issue that I feel the 9:45 end time was attempting to address, but it's more like a Band-Aid to a solution that has other root causes, in my opinion.
Thanks, Nell. Peter?
You know, I think the original idea of the 9:45 was to slow it down, take a look at the agenda, try to figure out realistically, managing a clock a little bit better, how we could conduct the rest of that night's business. Again, how it all fell apart on April 21st was, I don't think we could have seen that. As I recall, the original was not a final one person gets to say whether we stay or go. I believe at that point, and as I'm going back and thinking about the suggestion was at least 3 people had to sort of agree that it was okay to kind of continue on at whatever a time that was defined at that moment. I mean, that to me seems fair. We've often discussed over and over again, and in my 4 years on the board, that really decisions start to get strained and a little weary, you know, once you get to about the 10 o'clock hour. I know it's brave and, you know, a lot of caffeine comments and all of that can certainly play into the conversation, but I think we just need to, I think we need to control the clock a little better. I think the agenda setting committee sets realistic times that things should be discussed. I think it would be super helpful if we could sort of adhere to that. It's not always comfortable because there's a lot of people who have a lot of things that they want to say, but somehow controlling that in a way that would allow us to kind of conduct town business without stifling people would be handy. So I guess I'm not really sure what the point of bringing this back up. I wouldn't mind leaving the 9:45 check-in time to continue with a suggested time that we realistically discuss that we can finish by 10:30 and then vote on it. And, you know, if 3 people say we should, then we should. 5 people say we should, even better.
Thank you. My thoughts on this are, in the interest of simplicity, I like removing the rule, though I'm very sympathetic to the goals of the rule. And I think it's important to remember that at any point in the meeting, a majority of the board can end the meeting. Someone can move to adjourn at 6:20 p.m. if they want. I suspect that would not pass, but at any point, 3 members of the board can say, we agree it's too late, we want to stop. I think having the unanimous consent sort of trapdoor out from under option takes a difficult situation of a meeting running long and isn't helpful. So I'd like us to remove this procedure. Amanda?
No comments.
Isaac?
No, that's what you said sounds fine.
Okay. Any members of the public with
Can
a comment? Sure.
I know that any one of us can move to adjourn a meeting at any point in time during that meeting. I think that would be awful if somebody just abruptly just decided to do that and they don't agree with it. You know, comes a laser focus. I get that. That's always been in play, right? I guess maybe it's just been nice because we've never talked about it. So I just sort of like a mutual checking in.
I think certainly checking in as we notice the meeting is running long or as we get closer to the time, I think that absolutely makes sense. Yes, no.
Instead of having the wording, the select board may extend the meeting beyond 9:45 p.m. only by unanimous consent, we could have it, a majority of the select board members may vote to extend the meeting until a time past 9:45 p.m. We could just change the only by unanimous consent to 3-2, because I think what you're saying is you would like an assessment at 9:45 p.m. of like realism for the rest of the night.
I think so. I mean that was the original intention behind this, as I recall, and as it was presented, it didn't pass as it was originally presented, and this is my recollection of it. If I'm wrong, let me know. But the original thing was basically at 9:45 we check in, we discuss. You know, I think we can get this done in the next 40 minutes. We'll move to adjourn at 10:25. And if 3 of us agreed to that, and that was fine, But at 10:25, it was, point of order, it's 10:25, and then it takes one of us to basically kind of say, no, enough's enough, or we just agree at 9:25, that's when we're going to finish.
On March 10th, what we had considered was to, at 9:15, we would do a check-in, and at that point, we needed a 3-2 vote to continue, and then at 9:45, anybody could remove consent, and it would force the ending. At that meeting, I brought up that I thought we would just spend 30 minutes between 9:15 and 9:45 talking about continuing it, so we removed the 9:15 clause, but left the unanimous consent clause at 9:45, and so this is just, I think,
Alright,
the final step of that is switching unanimous consent to a 3-2 vote.
Yeah, I think 9:15 was a little too early to check in, given the unbrevity of our meetings. So I think, I wouldn't mind, but not unanimous, but, but.
Okay, so Nell has a motion on the floor to remove the language. If somebody wants to amend that, we can consider that.
So, didn't she amend her own?
Well, the board would have to agree
Okay.
to that at this point.
So, I'm comfortable with what Nell proposed, basically just, checking in at 9:45. And what was the language you used?
I borrowed the language, so I said the select board may extend the meeting beyond 9:45 PM by a majority vote.
All right. I'd make that friendly amendment.
Okay. Peter would like to amend to a majority vote to continue beyond 9:45 PM. My preference is still to not amend it and go with the original motion, but it's a decision for the board. Any comments?
Just for clarification, the original motion is to remove the shot clock and
Exactly.
have no 9:45.
Correct, and just
discussion.
rely on the baseline options.
Yep.
I think we're going to handle the amendment before we take public comment, and then we'll briefly take comment on the main motion. Any other comments on the amendment? See, yes.
Yeah, I appreciate the idea of checking in and having a conversation during the meeting, but I think that that's something sort of like taking a break, sort of like these other things that the chair you'll keep an eye on the clock, or Peter or you or I or anybody can say, hey, it's getting late, can we check in about how much longer we're going to go? I think we could do that. I don't think we have to put that in our rules in order to have that. I do think that for simplicity, it might make sense just to eliminate that, because at 9:45, it was a bit of a disruption in our conversation. And maybe there's other times when that conversation could happen.
Okay, well, let's, I think, are we ready for a vote on the amendment? All in favor of amending the motion to instead require a majority vote to continue at 9:45, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. All right, that fails 1-4. We return to the main motion. This is a fairly inside baseball question for the select board, but if somebody has a comment, I would happily hear it now. Yes, Marta.
I'd like to suggest that,
Could you say your name for
sorry, Marta
VCTV?
Gossage, District 9. I would like to suggest that perhaps a check-in at 9:45, and an agreement for how long the meeting will go, a new end time be agreed upon. From a citizen standpoint, especially during budget season, it's really frustrating when you have to get up very early in the morning, but you have a salient comment or question that you would like to ask, to have to stay up till midnight to do so. And I have a feeling that when budget season comes in the fall and winter, it will continually be pushed and pushed and pushed because there is a lot of work to do. And I remember hearing that phrase at previous select board meetings. We need to keep going because we have a lot of work to do. But, for citizens to be able to comment or ask questions, I just think it's one thing when the select board can talk to each other and say, I have to be up earlier or whatever, but asking kind of like the whole town to stay up till 11:30, even past 10:30, that's when I normally go to bed. There have been select board meetings that we have powered through till midnight because we had so much work to do. so as a citizen or in mind with the citizens of the town, maybe at 9:45, you can decide on a new end time and then hold to that, because there's got to be some moment where you hold to something.
Thanks, Marta.
I'd like to clarify, if this wording were to be removed in the section, it would still say, so, point S, regular meetings are from 6:15 until 9:45 PM or earlier. So that wording would remain. It would be the unanimous vote that we may only extend the meeting beyond that by unanimous vote. That's the language that would be removed. The reason I just voted against that amendment is because I took Isaac's point well, that I think if we're gonna have a discussion, we should do it at the start or the end of an agenda point, not in the middle. And I'm not quite sure how to put that in wording.
I suggest that if we remove this language, adopting the unofficial policy that as it gets late, as we're about to enter some big new agenda item, we check in as a board, I think makes sense. And that's something that I think anybody can do. You can just say, point of order, it's 8:45, we're about to start talking about a big topic, let's check in.
And
So-
the confirmation that our rules and procedures will still say that regular meetings are from 6:15 until 9:45 PM or earlier.
Yes. Other comments? Yes, Dick. And then I'm bringing it back to the board.
Thank you. Watching that meeting was really disconcerting to me, and then watching everybody's mea culpas at the last meeting. And, Amanda made a comment about the committee setting the agenda, which there's a lot of work to that. Somebody who spent 8 years here, I know that meetings can get out of hand. But I'm a strong believer that you can't run a meeting by a clock, because as you start looking at the clock, I think it starts limiting your conversation. I think a lot of things come into play that shouldn't come into play. And I would agree that at any point where someone wants to make a motion to adjourn, that majority rules. I was disappointed with the rules, and actually when you were doing them, I tried to call in. Fish, I think you tried to call me to connect, because I would have said one person should not be able to adjourn a select board meeting. 3 votes should take to adjourn. No business in Brattleboro, in all my years, over 30, 40 years of paying attention, not 1 vote, not 2 votes, control what happens at the board. It takes 3 votes, and that's the way that your rules should be run. 3 votes, if whatever you want to do, it's 3 votes. And so anything else that comes up, I disagree with it. I think that you go majority rules. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Okay, let's come back to the board for the vote on Nell's motion, which is to remove, let's see, S1, the select board may extend the meeting beyond 9:45 PM only by unanimous consent. All in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
4-1, motion carries. Okay, second item is the question of removing items from the consent agenda. Right now, any member of the board may pull an item from the consent agenda just without a majority vote. That item then goes to the end of the meeting, though the chair has discretion about placement. And the suggestion we heard at the retreat was to require 3 votes, with the goal being that things are removed with more discretion because they can have a big impact on the timing of a meeting. So, would someone on the board like to start us with a motion, if they desire? Well, if there's no motion, then we'll move ahead. I seem to be seeing no motion, so we'll make no change there. And the third item on my list is the idea of prohibiting cell phone use by board members at the table. And again, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll throw it out there. I move that we prohibit cell phone usage at the table. Select board members can have them on their person, in their bag, but that we don't visibly use cell phones at the table.
Okay, Amanda has made a motion to prohibit cell phone usage by select board members while at the table. Any discussion? Amanda, do you want to speak to your motion at all?
I mean, as select board members, we're modeling behavior of connecting with the public, whether it's online or in the room, and I think we should have the highest sort of regard for people's time and attention and actually be listening. And it's hard to do that when one's multitasking on their individual device. The reality of it is, because we have computers here now, if somebody did want to text message someone on a computer, they probably could. I'm not that savvy, so it probably wouldn't be me. So anyway, just being considerate and being attentive and actually working at a meeting rather than multitasking.
Thank you, Amanda. Isaac, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I confess I've used the phone at some point or other up here, but I would like that clear, consistent policy that we don't.
Thanks, Isaac. My only comment is that it's something that people are always talking to me about, and I think it would be nice to, I think this might be a nice change to make, but I'm interested in what the rest of the board thinks. Peter?
You know, I'm also guilty of using my phone while in a meeting. Majority of the time, though, I have to be honest with you, you know, something comes up in the meeting that I'm unclear of, I might use my device to look it up, to confer, to figure out if I want to make an argument to or from, what the general consensus is. So I do lean on it for information. You know, get the occasional text message from somebody who's watching, who doesn't feel comfortable talking. You know, I mean, that doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened in my three to 4 years up here. I mean, if we have a computer, I suppose we can be equally distracted by those. So, I mean, to me, I feel like we're juggling one and adopting another, so I'm indifferent to it.
Thanks, Peter. Nell?
I do think there's the question of public perception. I think people, especially when it's been discussed that we're using our laptops for access to backup materials, the public perception for that is different than a cell phone. And I think it's somewhat clear. You know, I actually watch these meetings back because I'm the clerk. And so I will watch myself when I'm taking notes, and I look at where my eyes go. And so that's something I'm trying to work on in terms of looking at who's speaking and making sure it's clear that I am engaged, even if I'm actively taking notes. I'm in support of it. The only thing that I might suggest is a friendly amendment at the end of barring emergent situations. I know that there won't actually be any blowback if somebody's emergency contact calls them and they have to take it, but I think that could be an easy thing to just have in writing as well.
I'm seeing nods. Unanimous consent for an amendment?
This is just applying just to select board members.
Right, I think we're specifically not including John here so that he can get emergency messages like he's always doing. Okay, let's, anyone in the public have a comment on this change? Potential change? Seeing none, Amanda has made a motion that has then been amended to prohibit cell phone use by select board members at the table except in emergency situations. Okay, are you ready for that question? I feel like you are. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstention? 401, motion carries. Okay, great. John, is there anything more we can provide at this point in terms of language or guidance?
No, I think I got it. I
Okay.
can redraft your rules and send those around.
Great, thank you.
Ladies
Well-
and gentlemen, we're on time.
We're actually ahead of time, but please don't jinx it. All right, we're moving ahead to regular business. The outside consumption permit application for India Masala House, presentation by town staff. John, I'm guessing that's you?
Sure, unless
Oh.
Carol, would you like to join us at the table?
Please join us, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Good evening.
Yeah, so, and I think I pretty much will turn this over to you, Carol. The town was approached with an idea for use of Plenty Park by India Masala House, and staff looked into it, and we were really trying to find a way to say yes, and we think we worked something out that would be amenable to the town. One of the requests that the restaurant made was the ability to serve alcoholic beverages while they were serving food, and so that required consideration for an outside consumption permit, which is the matter that's before you here today.
Great. Carol?
Yeah, so I think John did a good job summarizing what happened. We had, I'm basically here this evening to kind of let you know how we got here. And John kind of paved that road nicely. We were approached as the new owners took place into the restaurant next to Plenty Park. And one of the questions were how can we help, the downtown area, make it more vibrant and provide some outdoor opportunities for lunch and dinner. And so we had that conversation, and then the conversation went one step further. And I just want to be clear, I'm not here this evening to encourage or discourage a decision that's being made. It's just putting the facts before you so that you can make a sound decision. But when we were approached, some of the things that came up were how can we make that space known to the public during that certain time period that it is being rented to the Indian Masala House. So some of the things that we discussed is providing proof of liability insurance. If alcohol were to be served, that they go through the town process to secure the steps that are necessary for serving alcohol. But even further steps were so the public knows you just can't walk into the park, walk up, grab a table, and be served. There'll be signage out there that directs you to the front entrance to say, hey, if you want to have a meal out here, you've got to go through the entrance. The only situation that would change is if there was handicap accessibility needed, and that's much better access coming through the park to the area. To describe the area where it's not the entire park that would be rented out, it's the portion. So a portion of it. So if you were at the park and the new mural that's up there, there's almost like a stage or a platform. It's just that area. And what we talked about is when serving food and or alcohol, that it would need to be clearly marked that is the only area within the park that you can be served. One, your meal. Two, if you move forward with the outdoor consumption permit. I know we've always been talking about creative ways to try to bring in more revenue. This isn't going to solve all of our problems, but it's a little baby step in creating that step and bringing in some more revenue to the town. The one piece on allowing alcohol is, as I said, the steps would have to be taken, but it also they would, either need to be, they must hold a first or third class liquor license in order to do that. And I believe that is the situation. And we do have the owner is here this evening that he may choose to speak about it. I think in a nutshell, that's where we're at. I'm here to answer any other questions about how we went down this path.
Great. Thank you, Carol. All right, board, any questions for Carol or comments? And then we'll open it to the public. Nell?
So I just want to confirm a few things that I think you said, and also some that I had seen in the backup materials. So the days that the park is essentially being rented or booked by Indian Masala House, which my understanding is that would be every day unless a different party made a reservation of the park through the Parks and Rec Department.
The community would have first rights, not the restaurant.
Yeah.
So if we got a call today, I want to use it tomorrow, in our reservation system that we have called RecTrack, we are able to communicate with the owners of the restaurant, so they would get an automatic email and say, hey, it's being rented tomorrow. Okay, and then also one thing that I didn't point out, this would be portable seating, portable, for the lack of better term, fencing, so it would come out on the days that it would be used and brought back in at the end of the day. It's nothing we're gonna store. We don't have the ability to store any of that. So to answer your question, the community would have the first rights, and then the restaurant would come second.
Thank you. And so my kind of further question from that is, say somebody is walking around downtown and Indian Masala House has the back portion of the park in use, and that person comes and sits in the park or sits in a park with a group, or somebody shows up and starts playing music on their guitar. I'm trying to anticipate essentially where you have maybe some conflicting interests of what a public assumed use of a park is with an atmosphere that a business might be trying to maintain or create. And I'm wondering how those two would interact. Like, say someone shows up with a Bluetooth speaker and they're listening to it in the park. Does the restaurant have the right to say, please stop your music? Or everyone has the right to ask questions? Do they have any bearing, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Is that something that we've discussed?
It's not something that we've discussed, but certainly something that I've thought about. As far as, I'm going to answer the question without the music before I answer the question with the music. Absolutely. Absolutely. The park is there for anyone to be used, to use the park. As far as the music piece, I have a feeling we're going to be taking that one on a case-by-case basis. I would actually, I don't know how you would handle that, a sight on scene.
Good evening, everybody. We politely can ask.
Sorry, could you just say your name for everyone watching?
For the record, sorry.
Yes, my first name is Madan, last name is Rathore, so Madan Rathore.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, yes, there could be a situation, somebody playing music, and we politely can go and ask, they can lower down the volume and all. If somebody's eating, that it doesn't help. But again, I have seriously no idea how it can be stopped. And it's a public park too,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when they see people are enjoying their meals and all, maybe some people would understand not to create any kind of a disturbance, I would say, to anyone. So maybe you guys can suggest something that what our next step should be, or what should we do in this scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only other thing I'll say is, I've noticed there are some groups that oftentimes when there are vigils, I've noticed that park is a popular location for that. So this isn't me trying to speak against it at all, but I am trying to, I guess, flesh out the conversation because these are things I'm anticipating that could be maybe points of conflict. I've seen people come through with kind of like spoon bans as part of political action. So I am wondering just how we essentially plan to hold the public's right to use a public space as opposed to what we are trying to support for a private business here.
Many of the times when there are rallies at the park, people rent it.
Okay.
So that's where the notification system would go into play. I'm not going to say that's 100% because there are times where there are events that happen that we find out after the fact. And those are ones that I just wouldn't be able to control. But a majority of the time, we are notified, and the groups rent the space, and that would be, like I said, part of the whole system that would trigger, so that communication would happen.
Sorry, thank you for all of this, Carol. My last question being, the onus of providing the signage, would that be on Indian Masala House?
Yes.
Thanks, Nell. Peter, any questions?
Can you come back to me?
Sure. Amanda?
Sure. I would like to know what the town expectations are of monitoring the area. And I see that the hours are 11:30 to 10 p.m. for liquor sales when the restaurants open, according to the memo. So I wonder if that could be altered if the select board chose to keep it more like dinner time, for example, like 4:30 to 10, or something like that. So those are just some some thoughts.
Okay. Isaac, any questions or comments?
Well, I'm excited about the idea of outdoor dining in Brattleboro and having that be something that when people are going up and down Main Street, they see that vibrancy, people enjoying our downtown. I think it's exciting to think about that. My concern is about how this might affect other users of the space. So my only question is around the impact on the public who use this space for recreation, for rest, for community gatherings. I know free speech is very important to many people in Brattleboro. And so I would, and if people are playing their guitar or have their recorded music, my thought is that along with what you were saying, Carol, in terms of the priority being for the public and whether it's rented out or not, that, you know, that's part of the deal is if you want to sit outside, you know that you're sitting in a public park. And that might be interesting to see some protesters out there or some people playing music. And if you're really not into it or if it's too loud, maybe you can find another table inside. That's my thinking about that. But I did check it out. I looked at the space, and it's pretty much off to the side. It's not going to affect, as far as I can tell, the seating where the public would be seated. It's really out of the way. One thing that I would like to explore is, given that this is the first time I'm aware of that we'd be allowing a business to operate inside of a public park, that we might consider a small usage fee to contribute towards the town for the use of the
That's part of it.
space.
The usage fee is part of that.
Excellent. What is that fee?
We gave the fee of $1,000 for 3 months.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Isaac. I think this is a pretty appealing idea, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I think the reason some of these interactions we're not going to know until we see them. We're not going to know, is it something that's in conflict every day or once every couple months? But I think the reassurance I feel is that if we do notice that there's some issue that we can't solve, this is a decision we can revisit if that happens, which I think is unlikely. But Peter?
Yeah. You know, boy, I've gone back and forth about this. I think the precedent's been set. You know, I think we've done, maybe not a park, but we've certainly given up portions of our sidewalk, you know, outdoor consumption at our gallery walks. I think the onus is definitely on whoever is holding that license, for sure. And I had a conversation with John earlier that the town manager or the town offices have the right just to sort of rescind that if it becomes problematic without our intervention. And is that correct? I just don't.
Yeah, not the outside consumption permit, which is the issue here, but we would be essentially doing a lease through the Rec and Parks Department that we can give the ability to have alcohol served on a public park through consent of the town manager's office.
Okay, so
that's in the ordinance.
I mean, so we have some immediate control, I feel, on this situation. I too like the idea. I did go down, as Isaac did, and kind of took a look at the proposed space. I think I like the idea of people being able to dine outside and maybe having a beverage. I understand the concerns there, but I feel like we've got this, I feel like we have some good controls on it. So, yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Let's take comments from the public and then come back to the board. Kate O'Connor.
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. First of all, I want to say I want this restaurant to succeed. Anybody that goes into business, I want them to succeed, especially in that space in downtown. So this is nothing to say is about the business. I think you're missing the point of the space that you're using. First of all, it's a public park, and the tables aren't going to be tucked away into a little space. There's a mural there that was, I think it was $25,000 that was raised through community funding and a matching grant. All the material on that mural was contributed by people in this community. Remember the smashing and the bring your pieces down? That's a community mural that you are actually roping off for 3 months between the hours of 11:30 and 10 p.m. That's what really troubles me about this, and that you folks have kind of missed that. And the beauty of that mural is that you get to look at it far away, and you get to go and look at it up close. You see my shells that I brought from Ireland are glued to that thing. You see everybody's little letters and everything. So, well, I understand what you're trying to do. I think this is the wrong space. When we did it in COVID, you had the parking spaces. It wasn't blocking anything. If that wall was blank, I'd say go for it. But that wall isn't blank. That's a community mural that literally $25,000 was raised to build that mural. And I think it's a shame to rope it off and not make it available and accessible to the people that actually put it there. So I really hope that you'll think about this. And again, it's nothing about the restaurant. It is, the idea of people not being able to go and enjoy that mural because it is roped off is just heartbreaking to me. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Any other comments in the public? Cassandra and then Dick.
I know I have 3 minutes, but I do have a personal comment on that too. So if I can reset it for the work hat.
Sure.
So I'm from District 9. My name is Cassandra Holloway. I have something up there for my son. There's other people who have put stuff on that wall for their loved ones that you have to get up close to appreciate. So I really appreciate you saying that, Kate, because I was also thinking that. I haven't expressed that to all of you because I was talking to you all about my work concerns, but that is sad to me because I bring people to my son's thing, which is right in the corner, actually. So I'd have to figure out how to do that. So I don't know, that would need to get figured out, I hope. And I love to see the little kids running up and looking at all the fun flip-flops and phones and stuff. Okay, I'm ready to reset for my professional hat.
Yes,
so I also work for Building a Positive Community, and we do substance use prevention and youth empowerment work in our community. So I had emailed all of you, so I'm just going to reiterate what I put on there. First of all, I also love your business. I'm really excited that you're there. I live right next door, basically, so I'm really happy, and I understand, again, what you all are envisioning. I am concerned about a couple things. One is, the concern is about the ordinance, because the ordinance right now speaks to an approval for a specified amount of time, and this looks like it's going to be a longer term thing. And so you would need to look at your ordinance with your lawyer, according to the Department of Liquor Control, to make sure that you're, they're not going to give you guidance on that, but showing it to the Department of Liquor Control, they did feel like it was not aligning to what you all are trying to do. The other thing is you can't, according to the Department of Liquor Control, decide when they can or cannot be in that space. So if there is an event there, they at that point are renting that space. So you also want to check with the Department of Liquor Control, and I can give you the contact to make sure that that's something you can do once you have given that permit. But But it's also an opportunity to start to look at a clearer policy framework for what you're going to do around town-owned public parks when it comes to permanent in the sense of not a temporary, like, one-day thing, permanent use of space for alcohol serving or selling. And to your point, Peter, before the pandemic, there was an ordinance that you couldn't have any alcohol on any town property, and then the state kind of created this permission during the pandemic to basically save businesses. And this town has decided to continue to allow that, but that wasn't the case before the pandemic. So I just want to use this moment to pause and figure out what we're going to be doing around the sale of alcohol in public spaces. And so I hope you can take a pause and get these things figured out before you approve it. Thanks.
Thanks, Cassandra. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, Dick.
Someone who's done a lot of work in that park over the last 25 years, how disappointing to listen to the leaders of the community and say, this is a good idea. I really want to thank the people when they were putting up the river garden and that Dunkin' Donuts was sitting there in a corner. Maybe a lot of you people don't remember that. It was just an ugly sight. And the town has actually taken away seating up where the restaurant wants to go. And I believe they took away the seating to curb people sleeping outside. Not a good way to address, I guess, the homelessness issue and where people get to sleep. And those benches should be back there. It is a park, a public park. I believe at your retreat, you talked about green spaces and open spaces. That is the most utilized park in Brattleboro outside of up where the pool is, where it gets a little bit more activity. But everything happens there. There are tons of people that go there at lunchtime and sit there. And we took out seating. And so it really is an embarrassment to me when the leaders of the community don't realize what that space truly is, and they go, well, I know we're trying to generate revenue, economic development. Sadly, taking one of your parks and saying, hey, we're going to rent this out. And like Kate said, that mural, all that work that went into that mural from 11, if you don't get there before 11, you're going to get an obstructed view of that. And when people go in the park, things that were talked about, there's all kinds of activity that happens in that park every day. I've been downtown enough to see it, and for you people to sit there and go, yeah, this is kind of nuanced. This isn't like al fresco dining from a restaurant on the street. Profoundly different. I can't go and sit on the sidewalk downtown because there's an ordinance against it. So it's not the same. It is a park, and you have all lost sight of that, and that's embarrassing to me as someone who believes that park is one of the heartthrobs of our community, and a lot of things happen there, and you want to make it a commercial space, and it's not a commercial space. Shame on all of you.
Oh, come on.
Thank you, Dick. I think there may have been a way to express that point differently, but let's bring it back to the board. I am certainly, some of those arguments are compelling to me, and I'm not certain I'm ready to make a decision on this, though I was 15 minutes ago. I suppose that's the magic of public participation. But I'd like to hear what the rest of the board thinks. We have no motion on the table yet. Someone could make a motion. Or if someone has a comment, now would also be appropriate.
Yeah.
Amanda?
I'll say the public testimony regarding the importance of Plenty Park has been striking tonight. I knew Plenty Burrows and Franny, and they were really incredible people in our community. And the mural These are things that we don't know unless we all are in a room together talking about it. I therefore think that it is not appropriate for us to, and apologetically, because it would be cool to sit outside, but maybe not there. So I would not vote for the permit for outside consumption. And
Thanks, Amanda. Any other comments? At the moment, of course, we still have no motion on the table. Yes, John?
Again, this is about an outside consumption permit. I would say that, the board has directed us to look for revenue possibilities, and there's always trade-offs when you do that, and in this case, there are some trade-offs that have been brought up. We also, try to support our downtown businesses whenever we can with, with resources if that's possible, and that's really all we were trying to do is explore that idea. Certainly, if you all don't think that revenue generation or supporting downtown businesses is as important as maintaining that as a park for every other use, that's certainly what we can implement. But again, I would just emphasize that you've asked us to do these things. We've brought you an idea. Feel free to reject it, but this is the direction we've been getting from you. So.
Thanks, John. I think, well, just to say, it all comes down to a question of trade-offs, and the board may decide that this particular set of trade-offs isn't worth it. I'm sure any harsh comments you heard from the public were directed to the select board and not to staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's, Peter or now?
Yeah,
Still thinking?
I'm building something here, so just,
Yeah, I'll come back.
I mean, I think I shared my sentiment earlier, which was that it's a park and it should have priority access to the public because it's a public park. The people that I've mentioned this to who weren't aware of it were not a fan of it. My concerns were largely who gets priority and like if there's a conflict, what happens, which is what I was trying to suss out earlier. I really did appreciate the public testimony as well. And I think that when we're talking about trade-off, we're talking about $1,000 for 3 months. So to me, it's not an entirely compelling argument on the basis of revenue. And we saw High Tie be a pretty beloved and successful restaurant in that space for 4 years, 3 years. I'm not hardline on it, but I am inclined towards maintaining public space. I would see that those two things could coexist. And also the points made about the mural are well received with me, so.
Thanks, Neil. Yes, sir, please.
Well, since I occupied that space, there are some other things that I notice, and I don't think so it's really good for my business too. In that corner, the people come and take urine and all. And that is so, even the broad daylight, it's not one time. And people are eating and they're still doing it. So I don't think so this is helping my business at all. The reason it would help me, like if I put some table or something like, that we can take care. I'm not there to take anything from the town or anybody, just to help that too, like people would not do. Certain things are injecting there when people are eating there. So it is not a good picture that I'm there every day and I see all those things and nobody mention about that. That what else happens in that park. And I'm there since 10 o'clock till 10 and I see a lot of things. I can write, I can document, I can bring it whenever you guys want. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, 30 seconds.
Yes, 30 seconds, and then it's time for the board to take action.
2 owners prior to the new owner, when I was working in the park, they came up and asked about seating and right next to the building. And they wanted They talked to me about pulling all those shrubs out next to the building, which need to come out. The park actually needs to be redone. I could support if they reconfigured taking all those bushes out and putting in a permanent fence, not a temporary fence, next to the building, so you wouldn't be obstructing the mural. You could put the seating back in that belongs there, and he could have his seating next to the building. It would take some money. I would ask that the owner pay for this upgrade to the park, but then it would look much better with permanent seating, and we could do something along those lines, because it would actually probably make the park look better given the shrubbery that's there. So I'd ask you to reconsider that rather than what he's asking for now up on the plat. And I would talk to anybody further about that.
Thank you, Dick. Yes, Marta.
Marta Gossage. I have to admit, when I heard about this, I was actually really excited. The thought of sitting outside, having a nice meal with friends on a summer night was very, very appealing to me. I also appreciate the perspectives that have been shared tonight, but I think maybe there could be a compromise still. Something like 4:30 to 10, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday might be a compromise, or something in that area. So maybe if you don't make a decision tonight, maybe trying to make a different type of plan that would make everybody happy, because it certainly made me happy thinking about being able to sit out on a nice night and have dinner outside with friends.
Thanks, Marta. I see the hand up, Seth, but we have to bring it back to the board. We're starting to run long at this point. And I have a question. Well, the question for the board is there a motion, or do we move to the next item? Oh, please. Peter.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I will be honest with you, I hadn't considered the mural. So I think that is a concern. I think that that's a valid point. Both Dick and Marta had brought up two of the things I was going to suggest doing, maybe doing a physical shift or a time shift to make the mural more accessible. I have to admit, as a person who is downtown every day of the week, up and down the street all the time, I will admit to really never seeing anybody close up looking at the mural. I will also admit that I'm not necessarily looking for that while I'm walking up and down the street. So I have seen people relieving themselves in the corner. I have seen complete nudity there. One of the things that sort of attracted me to this idea was having more use of a space, I think, has this maybe unintended consequence of limiting that sort of thing from happening in the future. So I think that's one of these things that we need to sort of weigh. If the mural is, if somebody wants to go look at the mural and they encounter something like that, chances are they're not going to go look at the mural, right? I think it would be good to have some sort of a compromise after hearing this. I don't want to negate what Kate said or what Cassandra said with regards to the mural, because correct. I mean, a lot of it. I know there's parts of my bike shop on that wall. Not sure where they are, but I know that they're up there. So I think I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, that I see both the pros and the cons. I think I would be amenable to some sort of a physical shift or a time shift, but I'm still sort of a fan of kind of seeing this space kind of used in this manner in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Peter.
I have a motion.
Great.
It's a compromise motion. So I move to request a proposal from town staff to negotiate a compromise or trial period for outside liquor consumption permit for Masala House, exclusively on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Oh, nope, I can't do that, says.
Anna?
So I don't know if you recall the training I did on the liquor commission role, but you can only place restrictions on a liquor permit for compliance with the town ordinance. But as has been mentioned, there is also a requirement in our ordinance that if someone is going to have open containers in a public park, that they need to get a permit from the town manager's office. So you could place those conditions on that permit, but not on the liquor consumption permit.
Gotcha.
In this meeting, we are just voting on the outside consumption permit, right?
Well,
So
that was the
we could
topic.
renegotiate the lease and the usage of the park would be a separate issue. Am I understanding that?
Yeah, and that's typically staff manage that out of the rec
And,
parks
and
office.
that would, in what was gonna be also one of my suggestions is, that- so then, if we're restricting the lease, by default, we're sort of restricting when that outdoor consumption can be used?
Yes, because there's a requirement that you have to get this permit for because this is a public park, that you can place extra conditions that you wouldn't normally be able to place on an outdoor consumption permit otherwise.
So if Amanda really just needs to change,
Just needs to not say outside consumption permit.
she just needs to say lease. Right?
Great.
Yeah.
So,
Because, so what I'm hearing is Carol is like, yeah, let's make this, we could make this work. And owner of Masala House is saying, we want to both improve the space, create a good vibe. We're willing to negotiate with the town. Dick's idea about removing some shrubbery for the overall improvement. It sounds like the idea is as liked by, it just needs a compromise. So maybe it just needs further work, like going back to the drawing board until it gets presented to select board again.
yeah, if I could make a suggestion, rather than trying to draw up a compromise here in a motion, I think we could ask town staff to revisit based on the discussion we've had and try to find a compromise that preserves access while still finding a path forward. Does that sound
Would
appealing?
that be a separate motion from approving the liquor license?
Well, I think if we did that, my recommendation would be not to approve the permit until we have the bigger picture understood. But
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, I think we can take feedback and work with the restaurant to come up with a different outside consumption permit. In terms of the rec and park leasing, that is typically done just out of that office.
Right.
If you want to give some guidance on that, I think we'd be happy to take it and work out something that would be successful. It's up to you, though.
But so it sounds, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like it would be appropriate to ask staff to rework the outside consumption permit with the owner and come back at a future meeting?
I would say yes, if the Plenty Park stage area is not the area you want to have the outside consumption. Otherwise, if it was another area, it would have to be reworked in the outside consumption permit application.
Isaac?
So I appreciated the comments from the public about the mural visibility. I've often wondered, there's a tree right there, and that kind of blocks the mural as well. If we really are trying to prioritize mural visibility, there might be other ways to address that. Can we just clarify, how long are we talking about for this, the
3 months.
3 months, right? Just 3 months of the year we're talking about, and we're just talking about 1 year?
Let me ask John.
The outside consumption permit is for 1 year. That would also be controlled by the permit that we issued for use of town property. It could be more controlled through the permit to use the town property.
What I'm trying to get at is, I heard 3 months, $1,000 for 3 months.
That, I think, was the pricing scale, $1,000 per quarter, but not specifically for 1 quarter.
Oh, okay, so this could be conceivably for the next 6 months or something like that, that it could be occupied. Yeah,
if I'm hearing the board correctly, I feel like we are not quite ready to pull the trigger on this as it's drawn up here, and that it would be good to see if there's a different compromise, the time shift, the location shift, something like that, that allows something like this to happen while addressing some of the concerns. Does that sound?
Does that give you the direction you need?
Yeah, anything, question?
And I just want to make a comment. As much, I too appreciate all the comments from the public this evening regarding the mural. Dick, I also appreciate your comment on, because we've had this conversation in the past about seating there. I want to be clear with the board, that is not something that is in this budget. So making something like that happen would not happen within the budget that we are currently in or heading into. Because it's more than a simple fix, you know. There'll be quite a bit of work that would go into it. Do I think it would be a good idea down the road? Yes, I do. But I don't think that is something that would go into place this summer purely for financial reasons. So I wanted to make sure you had that knowledge as you're making your decision.
Thanks, that's really helpful context.
Is that referring to restoring, because Dick said a couple things. Dick was asking about restoring benches in the park, which I would assume is not in the budget. And then Dick also talked about essentially allowing the restaurant to modify the park at their own expense to allow for an alternative seating arrangement.
Correct.
Well, board, are we content with the feedback we've given John and to not take action on this tonight?
My impression was I don't particularly see, since the liquor license cannot be operational without the lease from the town, I do not personally have an issue with approving the outside consumption permit because John and Carol are here listening to all the feedback towards the lease portion of it, and one is contingent on the other. So that's my opinion. I don't need to hold off on the permit, but I do think that adjustments and considerations need to be made surrounding what that usage would look like in the park.
I agree. I would like to give everybody concerned their answer tonight with those concerns in mind as we were laying out the lease.
So is the lease something that can come back to us before? I know normally it wouldn't, but
does it need to?
If you want to.
I think it doesn't need to. I'm just, that's right? It doesn't need to come back to us.
No.
Sorry.
Hannah, yes?
If you're going to put the condition on the outside consumption permit that they have to comply with the terms of the lease, you need the lease first.
Okay.
What was that last
Hannah
part?
says we need the lease first if we're going to condition the permit on them following the terms of the lease. And I personally, I think, would be more comfortable knowing the whole solution before
Well, I
voting
mean,
on this.
that's a straight up legality.
Yeah.
So that kind of boxes us into a corner if we
You
want.
don't have to put conditions on it because there's two different permits here, and like we've all been saying, they sort of build on each other, so you don't have to, but it sounds like that's what I'm hearing you say, and I want to just clarify that you can't put any conditions on this permit other than compliance with an ordinance, and the ordinance says that you have to get the permit. So if you're gonna, it's sort of a chicken and egg there, so you don't have to do one before the other, but if you want to include the terms of the permit in your condition on the liquor license, you need that first.
Yeah, that's appropriate.
So you are recommending, if we want to do that, waiting on this decision until we know the terms of the lease? Or have a chance to define the terms of the lease? Is that?
If you want to be able to include that as a condition of the permit, yes.
Okay. Yes, Isaac.
It's mid-May, right? This is a beautiful time. It would be so nice to be able to be out there, for people to be able to be enjoying this. I would love for this new business recently located to the heart of our downtown, being able to use this space. Are we talking about, I mean, are we talking about that entire wall being taken up by a table? Or are we talking about a portion of that? Because if we could just make a decision tonight, you know, and to move forward, wouldn't that be great?
It would if the board as a majority chose to do that. And the board can certainly do that at any point by making a motion and voting.
I think, I would just throw out there, like, what I'm hearing is what we have to do tonight is approve the outside consumption. We approve that. I think town staff has enough direction from here. I don't think we need to micromanage that to approve the lease. And I would be comfortable, I'm comfortable with that, so that we can allow everybody to move forward and plan and come up with some, you know, alternative thing that would seem to work for the business and for our park and for our town. So I'm comfortable with making that decision.
Okay, so
I thought that Hannah just said that if the lease is going to be further modified as a condition on the permit, that we need that before we can approve the permit.
And just saying, if you're going to say that the condition of the lease is that they have to comply with the permit, I would recommend seeing the permit first.
seeing the lease first.
It's a
because-
permit, it's not a lease.
But we already are seeing the
The
permit.
permit for the park.
The park
Oh,
open
okay.
container permit.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, so if you want to change anything in this particular application, then you can't approve this tonight. You have to do it with, it basically has to be a reapplication for different hours, for different location, outside consumption permit location, and the other things that are listed in the application that's in your backup materials, the days requested, that sort of thing. So if you don't like, what I'm hearing is you don't like what's in this permit application, and you really want to have a different outside consumption permit project that's described in this application. So we can work with the owner and bring back something that is maybe more to your liking, and what I'm hearing are limiting the days, limiting the hours, and looking at sites other than in front of the mural.
Right,
Is that-
because the permit application does say the time, it does say all the days of the week, and it does say the stage in front, the Plenty Park stage area. So if any of those things are in doubt for the board, I think we should not approve this today. But if people are fine with, as written, the motion in the materials would be appropriate.
Yes.
In addition, a question for Hannah about liability. What's the clause of liability for the business versus the town on town property?
I think Carol said that they would be required to have their own liability insurance.
Listing the town of Brattleboro as an additional insured. That would be a requirement for the rental. As that is with all rentals that we have. If you're renting space and we require insurance, that you would be listing the town of Brattleboro as an additional insured.
Okay.
We are drifting fully over time now, so I'm just going to ask the board. Yes, Cassandra, 1 minute for an additional comment.
I appreciate that, because the DLC said that you can't, once you rent it, have any say in how they use that space. So I think you really need to talk to the enforcement officer, because if you approve it and the enforcement officer comes and says you can't do that, you guys really need to listen to what I said. That is what they told me. So one, you can't do that. And according to the ordinance, they're saying that doesn't look like a permanent space. That looks like it's a temporary specified time frame. So I think you need to talk to your town attorney about that piece and see if you need to change your ordinance. So this isn't recommendation, this is actually DLC advising. So I would really encourage you to do that first before you make these decisions. Thanks.
Thanks, Cassandra. Hannah, if you have a comment. I saw you reaching for the mic.
I was just prepared to answer if you wanted me to, but
Please.
there are two permits at issue here. You cannot, as Cassandra noted, put these restrictions on the consumption permit, but we have this other open container law in our ordinance about open container use in parks, and it says for a specified period of time. It does not say that is for a single day, or it just is like a year could be a specified period of time. There's nothing in there defining what that is.
Thank you, Hannah. So the question is for the board. And I think what we're hearing is that if any of the details about day, time, or location as written in the permit are in doubt, that we should not approve this permit. If somebody is happy with the application as is, we need a motion to approve the permit. And if we don't see a motion, we're going to have to take no action for now and move on to the next agenda item. So I'm looking, yes,
Yeah, I was just looking to confirm one
Yes.
fact with Carol, which is just, if you can remind us that stage space, how much, like, are we talking about the entire length of the mural being covered? Or are we talking about a portion of that?
The stage area takes well over 50% of the mural.
Yeah.
You know, because there's on the corner, each corner, you know, and then you got the stage in the middle, but well over 50%.
Okay. And we don't yet know whether this would be for, like, maybe this is a question, and maybe this has already been addressed, but can the amount of time, number of months, could this be for just the summer?
This permit is for a year. The other arrangements we make, I believe, can be for different lengths of time.
The outside consumption permit is either a one-time permit or a annual permit, but you can't do like a 3-month, but there is the open container permit on the town level, which is different.
And
At this point, I'm really going to have to request a motion from the board if we're going to.
A motion to what? I'm sorry.
A motion to approve this permit, or if there's no action to take, we can ask town staff to make adjustments based on the feedback they heard today.
Can we postpone to the next meeting? Could we accept that for an,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
so, I mean, so that this comes up in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I would say make a motion to postpone to a time certain, or to a date certain, and say the next meeting.
I honestly, like, I wanted to, sorry, I'm using my phone to see what the date is.
It's okay. I don't think it's been written up
All
yet.
right. So our next meeting would be June 2nd, correct?
Yep.
So I would make a motion to postpone the decision of this until a time definite to June 2nd.
Okay, Peter has made a motion to postpone to a time definite,
And
June 2nd. Amanda?
I have a comment. I would request from town staff to have something drafted up for combining all the things that we talked about with Carol and the owner, and also the possibility of being able to utilize the space without the outdoor with consumption permit. Just that alcohol can be served in the restaurant, but outdoors, so the use of the park, but I'm sorry, it's not, you know.
I think.
That could be an option, so anyway. So
I think that the alcohol piece of this, even though it's the thing that's really sort of mucking it up a little bit, is not the overall concerns I'm hearing. So I think just letting them do the permit, redo that based on the information that we've overconsumed here tonight is I mean, I'm comfortable with kicking this one down and hopefully coming to a quick decision on June 2nd.
Okay. I can't remember if this is debatable or not anyway, this motion to postpone.
Too late.
But let's move to a vote on the motion to postpone. Board members in favor of postponing to the June 2nd meeting, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 1. So 4-1, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. It's 8 p.m. I'm going to suggest we take our 5-minute break and come back with the local emergency management plan in 5 minutes. And it seems to be happening. See everyone in 5 minutes. welcome back, everybody. We're moving on to the local emergency management plan. And I think I see,
Yeah, we'll
Fire
ask
chief.
Chief Simons and Assistant Chief,
No, Chief of Police.
oh,
Chief of Police.
Chief
Yeah,
Evans?
yeah.
Evans?
He's the coordinator. He should get dragged up here too.
All right. We'll wait for him to join you.
Happy to be here. Yeah.
Hello, chiefs, welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
So you have in your packet the new updated for 2027 local emergency management plan. So this, the request is that you approve that tonight to be in compliance with state requirements, eligibility for state coordination and support, and clear, consistent framework for managing emergencies across the town. Sorry about that. We've got a mutual aid fire going on right now. So this is important because we need to file this in order to be eligible for FEMA funding if anything should happen in the town. Just some updates and stuff. So there were some questions last year about what this policy or what this plan does. So I just want to address some of that right off the bat. It ensures state compliance and coordination, eligibility for the state support and federal support, and it's our primary emergency coordination framework. So it's not a tactical response plan. The tactical response plans still live within DPW, fire, and police within those agencies. It defines how the town coordinates across multiple departments, how information resources and public messaging are managed, which is one of our priorities when we redid this plan, and how we support sheltering, care, and recovery. The emergency management plan supports incident commanders, coordinates resources and information, and provides public communication. Some of the improvements that we did this year: we enhanced the EOC structure and roles, we expanded public information and warning framework, and we improved planning for sheltering, reunification, and vulnerable populations, updated contacts, resources, and emergency purchasing authority, and added a couple annexes to improve communications and visibility. How the plan is used, so it's used on large-scale incidents to basically coordinate resources across the town. If anybody has information, it's posted publicly, so you can see how the town responds in any particular large-scale incident. It also lays out the coordination piece of who's responsible to call a state of emergency, put the town in a local emergency, and what that looks like. So that's what the plan does. I'll take any questions on the plan or added information you need.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Well, questions from the board? Let's start on the right. Isaac, any questions?
No, thank you.
Amanda?
It's amazing construction of a thorough plan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I also have no questions, but thank you for the updates you've made. Peter?
I will follow suit with no questions, but thank you.
It's going great. Nell, any questions?
I'm prepared to adopt this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, no questions from the board. Anyone in the public with a question or a comment?
I have a motion.
Amanda has a motion.
I move to formally adopt the local emergency management plan as the fiscal year 27 local emergency management plan as presented.
Okay, Amanda has moved to formally adopt the fiscal year 27 local emergency management plan as presented. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
One quick question. Did you guys get the form you have to sign?
No.
Do we have a form there now? Is that
This
for the
form
month?
is for the Code of Ordinances for solid waste.
Okay.
So
We
no.
will make sure to figure that out by the end of the meeting.
Yeah, or I can send it to you tomorrow. I just need one board member signature. Typically, the chair signs it, so.
You're gonna be at you just need one board member to sign it?
Yeah.
You want me to swing by in the morning?
Oh, I can do that too, yeah.
All right.
That'd be great.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank
You're
you,
released.
Chief Evans.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving ahead to the Fire Department Quarterly Review. Hello, Assistant Chief Kier, welcome.
Hello.
Before we begin, I do just want to acknowledge that I know this has been a challenging topic. Also, welcome, Billy. And I recognize that. I also recognize that you guys have been up here presenting on a lot of things often recently, and I'm just appreciative of you for doing that, and also for the patience and thoughtfulness that with which you do all of this. So thank you.
Thank you. So this is our report for the third quarter. Call volume was up a little bit with 1,184 calls, just showing our increased demand that we continue to handle. We had, in the last quarter, we had 3 resignations. We've had 5 new hires, some starting the quarter we're currently in. And we have 4 positions that we're still attempting to fill. We have 5 oral boards scheduled for Thursday, and we still have some more people that are in the screening process, so that process continues. Overtime. So we are over budget by overtime by $322,000. That's offset by $383,000 in salary savings in the salary line. That also includes our end-of-year comp time payouts that are going to have to go out. So we're still, even with those increased payouts in the last month of the year, we're still good there. 52% of that overtime is attributed to those vacancies. So had we not had those vacancies, we'd be in much better shape. So system trends, we've had a slight decrease in billable transports that you'll see in there despite higher call volume. That's due to not providing those transports, so a lot of those are for lift assist and refusals. We don't bill for those currently. And a lot of these folks are the high system users. They have limited access to primary care and face behavioral health and social challenges. To help limit those calls and take care of those high frequency users, we work with BMH and the social services and the the situation table to get them additional wraparound services so they're not calling the ambulance all the time. Training in leadership, so we've had strong emphasis on training with clinical upgrades. We got Huber needles, which access ports for patients that can't have IVs or shouldn't have IVs. We've had we had 988 crisis response training, just to give us another resource to help out folks that don't need a hospital but need additional resources. Rental inspection program, so some good news there. We're now receiving electronic payments. That's an initiative that was put together by Kristen Martin, the office manager, and the finance department. This took a long time to set up because there's a lot of little check boxes that need to be done for our system to talk to the billing system, to talk to OpenGov to make sure all those numbers come together. That program was put into place about 30 days ago, and we've already exceeded by our the number of checks that have come in with electronic fund transfers. So that we've already doubled that number, more than doubled that number. And some of those payments were payments that were due 2 years ago. So now that we have electronic services, we're starting to catch up on some of those. So good news there. Rental inspections, Zone 1 is complete, Zone 2 is underway. A list of all those streets are in the backup materials. Community engagement, Stop the Bleed, and community fire extinguisher programs are ongoing. Station tours happen all the time when all you got to do is call the station if you want a station tour, and we'll set you up. And then continued standby event coverage. We did also host a rabies clinic in coordination with the police department that was very successful and went off quite well. And pending any questions, that is all I have.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for the report. My only question is, you commend your office manager for helping with the electronic payment system. I probably should know this, but I was wondering what their full name was.
Kristen Martin.
Kristen Martin. Thank you. Any questions from the board? Peter?
Not at this point. No, thank you, though.
No?
I think only just that I think it will be helpful to have on the record for public understanding if we have 52% of overtime essentially caused by by staff vacancies, so that's resulting in callbacks of people, right? Because you're not able to be fully.
Nope, those are, so callbacks and shift fills are two different things.
Thank you.
Callbacks are, right now, there's a mutual aid fire happening in Keene. We did a callback to bring staff back to fulfill the station. Shift fills is a known vacancy that we fill for the full 24 hours.
Okay, thank you. And I would assume that shift fills are less of a impetus on the individual than a callback would be?
It's more planned.
Yeah,
Would be the.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And for the other overtime that we're accounting for, are those things like mutual aid calls or structural fires or?
Yep.
Like, yeah, unaccounted
So
for
all that
emergencies that
stuff,
require.
I broke it up, so there would always be overtime in like the callback
Yeah.
category. I broke it into vacation time that would exist. So for example, there's 3 officers on the shift. We have to have a minimum of 2. So if an officer calls in sick and another officer's on vacation, we have to fill that vacancy. That vacancy would exist whether we were full staffed or not. So all that's broken down into the overtime that would occur no matter what, and the overtime that's occurring specifically due to those vacancies.
That's great. Thank you for explaining.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nell. Amanda?
No questions. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Isaac?
I was curious about the care coordination with Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. Could you speak at all about what that's looking like? Or are there meetings happening, or how is that coming along?
Absolutely. Now I'm going to turn it over to the person that goes to those meetings.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So I work very closely with the social workers and the care coordination team at the hospital. So if someone is experiencing homelessness, if they can't meet their basic needs, there's different routes that we can try to get them connected through. So we also have many people who don't have primary care, and so through the hospital they can get on with VCCI, they can get on with some of the different programs through their social work, and so I work very closely with John Glover and Amanda Roberge to get those folks connected.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Any members of the public with a question or a comment? Kate, and then Dick.
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I'm going to break the rule and just look over here for 1 second.
One
I want to
second.
thank you folks for including the information on the patient transport numbers and the collection numbers. That's the kind of information that can actually help us when you're putting together the FY 28 budget, whatever's coming next. So thank you for including that. It's very helpful. I do have one question in regards to the collection agency. How are we paying them? Is it by percentage of what they collect? Is it a flat rate? Because obviously we're going to have to pay them something. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. The collections payment arrangement?
So most agencies do it based on a percentage. However, Golden Cross, who is our collection agency, they do it on a flat rate. So that rate has not changed. And do we have a contract end on that?
We do have a collection, so just a point of clarification, Golden Cross is our billing agency, and then we have a collection agency as well, which is FFR. They are the collection agency that Golden Cross uses as well, and they do take a percentage of the collected fee.
Okay, so a flat fee to Golden Cross for billing,
Yep.
and then a percentage to FFR for collections.
Correct, on the
Great.
percentage that they obtain.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dick?
Before I ask my question, a follow-up, what is that percentage?
The percentage that they
That the
charge?
collection agency gets, what is the percentage of that? And then my question, I noticed with the staffing updates that you had some, I'm not going to say anybody's name even though it's public record. Somebody left in February, and then I see that they're coming back in June. Wondering what happened there. But here you have 4 vacancies. Now, the 2 people that are coming back in June and July, are they considered vacancies until the positions are actually filled?
Dick,
or
can
are
you
they
address your
unstaffed?
question to me,
You need
please?
to address the chair.
I was talking to you, but looking at them.
Yes, of course.
Look at him, too.
So if you could clarify that question for me, and the percentage.
Yes, so the first question is, do we know the percentage the collection agency charges of what they collect?
We do not off the top of our head, but
Okay.
we'll get that for you.
Great, thank you. And then the second question?
So the second question, we had a member that resigned and then reapplied. They just had a change of heart and wanted to come back to BFD, so we were happy to have them back. All the hires prior to July 1st, which are all but one, all count towards current vacancies. The one that's starting on July 4th will count towards the future vacancy. The existing 4 vacancies that exist right now are just this fiscal year vacancies. We did not add the additional one that's still vacant for after July 1st. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, great,
Okay.
thank you. Other questions from the public or anyone online, Seth? Okay, seeing none, I think there's nothing left for us to do but to thank you very much for the report.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, let's move ahead to the FY26 quarterly budget review. I think we have Bonnie on Zoom.
Yep.
So we'll invite her to join us. Hi, Bonnie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So you have the in front of you, but this report is for the 9 months ended March 31st, 26. So it covers from July 1st to March. So 75% of the fiscal year. Your cumulative revenues raised so far are 103%. And your total expenditures represent 82%. But we annualize items that are paid or collected more in a concentrated level at the beginning of the year or halfway through the year. And when we do that, our cumulative revenues are annualized at approximately 83% of the budget and the expenditures at 79%. To date, or through March 31st, we have total revenues of $25,796,000, expenses of $20,567,000, and currently a surplus of $5,229,000. We have cash balances of $17 million, and included in our revenue, we have receivables of $5.3 million, of which the majority of that is our property taxes at $4.76 million. As commonly reported by my reports, I do an area of notation with the EMS revenue to try to answer any questions and keep that subject current and up to date for the select board. Our revenue is $1,026,000 and represents 100% of the FY26 revenue. If we annualize that, we can expect that we'll earn $1.368 million of revenue during the fiscal year, which is already approximately about $488,000 higher than what we have budgeted. Every month, I look at the EMS reports and I see what has been billed and I see what has been collected, and I take an average year to date. That average still remains at 38, and that's a good number because that is what I book for receivable of the total receivables. So what I have for receivables on page 1 of this report of $387,000 is only 38% of the total receivables with the EMS billing. And after a few discussions this past week, it's not in the report, But the question of cash basis EMS revenues seems to come up a lot. So I converted, as of the end of March, the revenue to a cash basis, and it actually is $11,000 higher than this $1,026,000 that we're showing in the records. And that's just simply taking the net change between the receivables at the end of FY25 and the receivables at March 31st. But we're actually, if we were to convert it to cash, we're in a higher position, which is great. There's really no change with our benefits. We're at approximately 71% of budget. There are some benefits that are going to be over, but our health benefits are going to be under, so I expect that we will come in on target with that. Skipping down to our overtime budgets, I totally agree with the fire chief and his figures. We, again, are at 75% of the budget, and when I take the total expenditures of overtime, salary, regular salaries, and compare that to the budget, we're at 76%. Recognizing the overtime for the police, we do the same sort of calculations, knowing that we're underspent in some of the salary lines. And even though we're over in overtime, we're still at 70% of budget, which is below the 75%. So that's it on the general fund. For the utilities fund, again, we have cumulative revenues that are raised at 76% of budget and expenditures at 59%. When we annualize our expenses, we come down to about 57% of budget, and we're showing a surplus of 1.1 million in the utilities. In the parking fund, we've received 58% of the annual budget in revenues and 68% in expenditures. Annualizing the expenditures brings it down to 67%. So we do have a deficit of $99,790 in parking, of which $75,000 of that is depreciation, so non-cash outlay. So that's where we are at the end of March cumulatively for the fiscal year.
Great, thank you, Bonnie. I have one question following up from earlier, just to check in. John suggested we ask if you have any up-to-the-moment knowledge about the status of the audit.
The auditors will be there tomorrow morning at 8:30. So they will be in the field tomorrow and Thursday. And, you know, I've discussed with them several times about the deadlines and making this as efficient as possible. We've had all of the audit documents and work papers uploaded to them probably for about 3 weeks or a month now. And they've been working on planning documents and doing a lot of their planning. They've picked samples of testing in areas of payroll, accounts payable, purchasing, and utilities, and those are all picked and ready for them to begin tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Board members, other questions? Peter?
No.
No?
It's well covered.
Amanda?
I have one question, Bonnie. When you talked about the deficit of 99,000 plus, which is 74,000 is depreciation, does that mean that that's the net? How does that
No,
work?
depreciation is a valid expense that is calculated into the revenue less expenses, but it's not a cash outlay. It's there more to help support capital plans as it goes when the property needs to be refurbished or replaced. So I just wanted to point out that the $99,000 deficit was not a cash deficit. That there was 75,000 of that was depreciation.
Got it. Okay, clear. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Isaac, any questions?
No, thank you.
Great. Well, any comments or questions from the public? Seeing none. Bonnie, I think we will thank you for your presentation and let you go.
Okay, have a good night.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Welcome.
All right. Let's take up the FY27 draft utility fund budget. And we'll welcome Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi,
And
Dan.
Pete. Hey, guys. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
So in your backup, you have a draft of the proposed FY27 utility budget. The intent was to, answer any questions, take any feedback, and then return at a later date to approve the budget. Again, this is the utility, so this is the approximately 3,500 users of the water and sewer system, which treats and provides about 1.5 million gallons a day to the customers. So FY27 is the second year of the 5-year rate ordinance that was laid out, that was based on the rate analysis study that we did with NewGen a couple of years ago. So far, it seems like things are tracking as anticipated with that study. When you look at the revenue side of the budget, the FY27 numbers that you have before you are consistent with the rate increases in that ordinance, which reflect a 9% increase on the water side and a 1% increase on the sewer. This is, so if you remember, there were on the water side, there were 2 9s, and then the following 3 years would be 3s. On the sewer side, we were actually a little higher than recommended, so we had a 0 last year, a 1 proposed this year, and then 2 2s or 3 2s after that. On the expense side, the proposed budget represents a 2.8 increase, or 2.8% increase over FY26. A lot of that is related to wages and benefits and the wastewater treatment plant. So I'll just highlight a couple of the standout lines. And personnel, I guess throughout the budget, if you look at it, there's some pretty significant changes from FY26. Some go up, some go down. They don't represent any new spending. They're kind of reallocation of those expenses. The personnel levels are the same as they have been, and what it was is the personnel is allocated per the rates for which divisions they work in, and as people have transferred and moved around, like some of those weren't accounted for correctly, so they've been adjusted to represent that in the where they should be in the FY27 budget. And also, Bonnie pointed out to me that the FY26 budget wasn't built in OpenGov as it was for the general fund. The parking fund and the utility fund were built manually. So FY27 represents using OpenGov for the workforce calculations, and should represent accurate staff distribution, and everything's reallocated the way it should be. Hopefully it's more accurate than it was. So that kind of sums up the big changes in the personnel costs. On the wastewater treatment cost section, the expenses in the wastewater treatment plant are up about 2.7%. The major drivers of that are increases to sludge removal costs. That's part of our contract with RMI. So these are, annual increases that are in the contract. And also chemical costs, we've seen increase from the chemical companies that we've budgeted for. There's a section there for pump stations, which represents wastewater pump stations, and that section of expenses is up about 19.9% in the electricity. Most of that is attributed to the Broad Brook pump station in Guilford, which receives Commonwealth Dairies flow, and Commonwealth in the last year, 2 years, has increased their allocation from 100,000 gallons a day to 180,000 gallons a day. So they've been ramping that up. So, you know, because of that, those pumps are running more. They don't shut off at this point. They run around the clock. So that's where that electricity increase is really coming from. And then the last big increase that I wanted to point out is the transfer to the general fund. So there's a $109,000 increase in that transfer, and that represents a more accurate calculation of where those general fund expenses are utilized within the utility. Bonnie worked through the calculation that we've been using and applied it directly to the staff members that are working on the utility, and align that better with the services the utility is receiving. So it's not a new cost, it's just a more accurate allocation of the support services that the general fund is providing the utility. I guess that's kind of what I have on the operating budget portion of it. I don't know if you want to talk about that and then go to capital, or just keep going through.
Let's keep going through for now and do questions at the end.
Okay, sure. So the capital plan, I included a 5-year snapshot of the capital plan. The FY27 expenses remain consistent with what we had previously. We have shifted some allocation of some funds around a little bit to better represent the current needs of the department. We updated some project costs. We adjusted some fleet replacement timing to better reflect what we're seeing with the wear and tear on the vehicles. The secondary tank installation that was approved in the consent agenda was adjusted in the capital plan. And I think that the biggest change that we're recommending is for quite some time, there's been money allocated towards the upgrades of Putney Road, which is a VTrans project. They were going to install a bunch of roundabouts and reconfigure the whole roadway. That was going to have a big impact on both our water and sewer utilities. They're trying to figure out what to do with that project. We had a meeting in March. It looks like the project will be scaled back and therefore have less impacts to the utility. We've recommended leaving, there's like a $1.25 million for water line replacement in there. That work needs to be done. That's an old, outdated line. They are looking at whether the scope of the new project, if that can be incorporated in it still. If not, we'll still have to find a way to do that work eventually, and it's allocated. As far as the sewer infrastructure goes, the impact on that is going to be much less, it looks like, through this new, through the scaled back project. And we've got some pretty immediate needs at the wastewater plant. We're about midway through the life cycle of that plant since the upgrade, and we're starting to see parts and pieces failing, equipment needing rebuilds that wasn't necessarily anticipated. So we're recommended shifting $250,000 from the Putney Road sewer upgrades, and then there's another almost $59,000 in planning for Putney Road, shifting that over to wastewater treatment to address some of those needs, like our dewatering presses. So a lot of this came out of that biosolids study that we have been working on. Our dewatering presses aren't as efficient as they should be because they're in need of repairs, and the repairs are $200,000 per press approximately, and we have 2 presses that need repairs.
That's
yes.
true.
And then, there's other areas too where just need to do some upgrades, and that money would go a long ways rather than adding additional funds to the budget. And I think that's the highlights I had.
Great. Thank you, Dan. I have one question about a scenario like with Commonwealth Dairy. Do they pay proportional to usage? Do we see more revenue if they're using twice as much
They
flow?
do. So Commonwealth is billed, just like all of our other customers, off their water meter reading. That's something we have been discussing internally, and I had a conversation with Bob and Hannah about whether we should be looking at the ordinance to shift that, because a typical residential user, it's pretty much equals what comes in, goes out. Might not necessarily be the case. The composition of their waste is different. So something to look at as they continue to grow.
Great, thank you. Questions from the board? Amanda?
Thanks for the great presentation. I love talking about this stuff. So you mentioned the electricity that they're using uptick, that's affecting. So will there be concurrent building or billing that matches their increase there? So not just their volume, their metered volume, but also takes
So
into
currently,
account?
we're just billing them off their usage. So the more they use, the more we bill them. So theoretically, that gives us more revenue towards those expenses.
Yeah, does it feel matched up pretty well now, or is it worth evaluating?
I don't think it's terrible. I think it's worth evaluating. We're currently, we need to renegotiate our agreement with Algiers. So I think it's all gonna come together. When the Algiers wastewater collection system was built, we signed a 30-year agreement, which comes up this fall. So we've started some initial talks with them, and I think it's all probably will come together at the same time.
I think a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, you were talking about tough time staffing the sewage treatment plant. I mean, there was just a lot of staffing needs because retirements and stuff. Do you feel good about?
We're in a good position. We're fully staffed. We've got a good crew, and they want to be here. So
That's awesome. And one more, and that is, tell me about fuel increase expense. How does it affect these systems for operating expenses for our utilities?
So as far as like wastewater treatment and water treatment, we really see it on the chemical side and on the sludge removal, because we're getting fuel surcharges on those. Yes, our direct fuel costs increase as well, but they're not fuel intense operations, right? It's standby generators, it's the trucks we run, sort of thing. So that's where I think that's what's driving some of the expenses on the chemical side, and along with our sludge removal contract, there's fuel surcharges in that. So
Thanks, Amanda. Isaac?
Yeah, it's good to see this 5-year projection. I'm noticing this $7.6 million projected expense for the water mains in FY30. Could you say more about that? And
so when we began working with NewGen on the rate analysis, there were a series of projects that kind of all hit in a handful of years, right before or after 2030, and the recommendation from them was that it was going to be difficult to cash fund those projects. They were big enough that, $1 million here, $2 million there. We couldn't really budget for it. So they were clumped together with the anticipation of bonding for a larger project, likely through like the water investment division like we have for some of the ongoing projects or the recently completed water treatment facility. There's still good subsidies there. So that was the idea there. Honestly, with the delays we've seen with some of the other projects, I think it's likely that, we may get into planning for some of those, but they'll probably get pushed out a little bit from 2030.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Peter, any questions?
No, I'm good, but thank you for the presentation.
No?
I'm collecting information and I'm enjoying it, so thank you very much.
Great.
I had one more question, if that's
Please,
okay.
please
So
ask.
you had said, Dan, that for fiscal year '27, using OpenGov for workforce distribution and other, like for the budgeting, you had said that got plugged. So I wonder, does that come right from your department doing that part of it? Or are you feeding it to finance for them to input it? Or who actually does all that labor of doing that?
So the finance department provides us with the base budget that includes all the labor and benefits and that sort of information, and then kind of standard increases to the other lines. And then we go through and have conversations and back and forth and, you know, what we need to adjust, what, you know, maybe could go up, could go down kind of thing. So it's a collaboration.
So it's just labor that goes into open.gov, not operating expenses?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Labor and benefits.
And revenues. Okay.
Thanks, Amanda. So as far as action today, it doesn't sound like the board is providing particular feedback for changes. Is that all you need to hear, and then a final budget comes back?
Yep, if there was any additional guidance that you had for developing a final budget, that would be very helpful. If you don't have any, that's fine too. We'll bring back something close to what you see here tonight.
Great. Well, I think that's what I'm hearing, and I'm seeing thumbs up and nods. So let me ask if anyone in the public has comments. Dick?
We did talk about Commonwealth yogurt. The increased revenue that they're bringing in, is that offsetting the expense that it's costing our equipment? That would be question one. And then as I went down, I was looking at revenue, and year to date, we have sewage disposal revenue is at, for this year, it's budgeted for $350,000. The actual is $403,000, and wondering why in next year's budget that's before us is proposed at $350,000, and why there's not an increase there. Third question, and maybe it's here and I don't see it, the budget has changed a little bit through the years, that outside revenue from outside septage haulers, I don't see anything here for that, and maybe it's here and you could tell me that. And then if you would go down into the capital plan and talk to me a little bit about the crane expense. I think that's for $230,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
Sure.
Okay, so I heard 4 questions. The revenue offsetting the cost for Commonwealth, it sounded like the answer was yes, mostly, but we're reevaluating to see if we can have a system that's more accurate or matches up better.
Yeah, and I think maybe what Dick's referring to is in the past we've had some struggles with Commonwealth and the discharge that they've sent us, and it's caused additional wear and tear on our systems. The newest current owner of Commonwealth has invested a lot of money in pre-treatment of their waste, and the product that they're sending us is much better and much less concerning than what we've seen in the past.
Great, thank you. Second question, the sewage disposal revenue.
Sure. Yeah, so the sewage disposal, that's actually, well, we can combine the second and third because that is the septage disposal. And it is strong this year, but that's like your local haulers that pump septic tanks outside of the system and bring that waste to us. We don't really know what that is going to bring, so we budget conservatively on that. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, but that sewage disposal represents the septage being hauled in.
Okay, and that also was Dick's third question
Right.
also.
Yep.
And then the capital question about the crane expense, which I'm looking for.
223, yep.
Yeah.
That's, so that's the service truck that the distribution and storage division uses. It has a crane mounted on it for, lifting pumps, lifting ditch boxes, whatnot. The current truck is a 2004, so we've bumped it out. It's been a good truck, and we've bumped it out several times. And it's getting to the point where we should be replacing it. We're seeing increased maintenance costs on it. The 223, I think that the most recent estimate we got for that truck was about $275,000. So we budgeted 223, anticipating some trade, and then there's also, if you look in the column to the left of that, there's about $72,000 in surplus that is from savings over the past years, where we may have got a better trade-in than we anticipated, or price came in a little lower. So the thought is that we could apply some of that surplus to make up the difference on that truck.
Great, thank you, Dan.
And that's in this fiscal year, not the
Correct. Yep.
budgeted one that we're looking at.
Correct.
Other questions from the public? Seeing none, I think no serious feedback on changes from the board, which is good news.
Great.
So thank you both. I'm not sure if either of you is staying for parking, but
Not up here.
not staying.
Thanks,
Thank you
Dan.
both.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, we have reached our final agenda item of the night. Looks like Chief Evans is joining us. Welcome, Chief.
Happy to be back. Also, I did put my notes on my phone, so I apologize.
It's only
not on the board, I guess.
It's
so
only us.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Town staff is exempt.
Thanks for having me here tonight to go over this with you. Would like to thank DPW staff for their continued assistance this year in the transition of this over to the police department. Also, great bit of appreciation to the parking staff we currently have, to Carol Colombe, who retired this year, who was part of parking when I got here, so that was a minute ago. And also to our office manager, Wayne Warwick, who's been instrumental in helping me work with Bonnie on getting this to you guys today. Dan pretty much hit on all the key things, I think, because the similarities with like the transfers and things like that. So I won't spend much time on that unless you have specific questions. The one thing I will kind of hit on for you is the income for FY26 over the estimate versus the actuals. And I can tell you that we've had a few things this year. We had the retirement, which knocked our staffing down. When you're talking about a department in the town that only has 2 to 3 people in it, when one retires, that creates a significant hole for us. We had a little bit of difficulty getting a new hire to fill that position. So we had a significant amount of time this year with only down one person actually out doing enforcement, which shows. We do have that position filled right now, and we have someone in training. So hopefully that'll be a big mover for us. We also had this year some downtime and retraining due to the new software that we brought in from last fiscal year. So we, just to remind you, we transferred from 2 different software systems to one, looking to save cost in the systems themselves and also in the time spent with employees, transferring data back and forth between those systems. That transfer took us a little bit longer than we'd hoped it would. So that definitely was felt. And also with that software system, there was, for the short version, there was hardware involved with that transition. Also that required new learning for the people out doing the enforcement action. So we had a little bit of that. The one large hit was the workman's comp, which last year was, I think, budgeted for about $3,000, and it was actually $30,000. My understanding on that is that's a cost that's generated across the town. It's not related specifically just to the parking budget. And for one other number for you, the free parking that we did in December, that looks like that cost us about $18,000 in parking revenue. Not saying we should or shouldn't do it. I just wanted you to have that number so you knew what we looked at for cost-wise when we did that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from the board, starting on the left this time. Nell?
My question going into this had been about staffing, and you answered that. Some of the details are helpful to know. Sorry. And I think to some extent, we'll have to see how the revenues trend with the turnover from the systems, the additional hardware you mentioned, that was retraining, and how that goes forth with the new hire. So thank you for your work on this.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nell. Peter?
Yeah, honestly, I don't have any real concrete questions. I mean, it's pretty, it's pretty well laid out, and it's parking. So really, what are you going to do about it, right? But thank you.
Thank you, Peter. A couple questions from me. I think, John, from our conversations, this budget has no parking fee changes or any fines or anything like that. It's all the same.
No, it's the same rates that you approved last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
The revenue's worrying. I think missing the staff person is certainly part of it. Permits are down quite a bit, even from actuals. I mean, it's still on pace to be down 40,000 or so from the actuals in the year before. So I'm wondering if we have any thoughts on causes there. And then, so that's one question. The 22.6% increase in staff salaries, I'm assuming this is the result of that finance recalculation of what goes where? And it's not a half a position or anything like that, it's just a reallocation.
It's the same staff. Yeah.
Okay. And then the big question is just what we could do to try to move the budget in a more balanced direction. I think changing fees after such a big increase last year would be really difficult. I do think we should consider if there are any opportunities for rebalancing fees based on usage. So for example, if High Grove Lot is not getting used at as high a rate as Harmony, we can rebalance fees and make it a little cheaper in High Grove, a little more expensive in Harmony, maybe get a better allocation of where people park and hopefully make a little more money in the process. So that's something I'm curious about. And then just a question for the board is if there are other things we want to be thinking about before this budget comes back in terms of changes to try to find something more balanced. The parking system does not have to be balanced, but to whatever degree it is not balanced, it's just a cost in the general fund, which is also not something we want. So that's something that should be on our minds when we're thinking about a final budget. So those are my comments. Amanda?
Yeah, thank you. This is, I mean, it's a lot of work here. So do you think it was just a clerical error that it was listed as 3,000 instead of 30,000 in the workers' comp line? Was it just a missing zero, maybe?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm the one to give you
Yeah.
a good answer on that. I'd
Okay.
probably defer to John.
And this
Okay.
might also be one of those.
That was just a whoopsie, I think. It must have been. 'cause
No,
it was
it's,
like-
that is not, I mean, that I think is correct.
Even though it was listed at 3,000, if,
Yeah, you can see that the FY '26 budget is a lot different from what the past charges have been on there. So if anything, there was a mistake in this year's budget, I think,
in the 26,
FY '26 budget.
yeah.
Right, the 3,000.
The 3,000, just maybe a missing zero kind of thing?
Could be.
Yeah, okay. I would love to know about, like, well, I guess I have a couple things. How do billables and receivables work through your department, chief? Do you have to do that all on your end and then work with finance to, how does that all go?
No, with the software changes, most of that goes straight through, either through parking or straight through into finance.
Okay. And does
Part
it?
of our change in the software was trying to align our software system so it would talk to each other because our old ones wouldn't. So
Okay.
there was a lot of downtime in between there, people taking information from one program and physically putting it into another.
And now it sets out a report every week or
Right.
so?
It hasn't been perfect, but it's much smoother than it was, yes. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so who in your staff has to manage that piece to get it to?
Most of that is still through parking.
Okay.
There's some oversight, financial-wise, that myself and the assistant chief do. But primarily, it's through the software.
Okay.
A lot of that's done through IPS now.
And then the software, are there extra fees that are associated with the new software? There was just an article on Vermont Public about software fees kind of taking money out.
I'm not positive on exactly how the fee breakdown goes for the software. If you'd like, I can come back with that in a more specific manner.
I was just.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want to
guess
clog
and
things
not
up.
be
I
accurate.
was just kind of curious if you're seeing a change with that, because other towns have been reporting that there's some money being siphoned out of the municipality for the software cost.
Our anticipation going into it was that our software fees would be less when we combined, so
Yeah.
we can definitely look at that.
I saw John making the note. of your
Transaction fees?
Yeah,
It's,
we can
Yeah,
bring
it
back
it
more
would be
information.
curious to know.
question. Any other questions, Amanda?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Isaac?
Yeah, so the feedback that I got when I was talking to downtown merchants and soliciting feedback from residents about what do people think about the parking, what is the changes that people would like. The number one thing I heard was that people would like to see more signage, specifically around, this is one comment I got, more and clearer signage for visitors, especially explaining that rates in the garage and Grove Street lots are longer hours for lower hourly rates. Signage should also notify folks that if they get a parking ticket, they still need to pay for parking. I've frequently seen visitors get a ticket and think, oh, well, their parking is the ticket price, then are shocked to see a second and third ticket on the windshield 2 hours later. So this is just one of the signage issues, just people wanting to know what is the rate for different lots, because it's great if we can get more money for, if we increase the rates at one place that's always full, that information, we should communicate that in a clear way to people so that they can make a decision based on that. Or if there's really good lower price in another lot, for people to take advantage of that, if we could have that communicated somewhere. I remember that being a comment that was made last year. The other thing is making the loading zones more clearly, and these are a little outside of these actual rates, but I think while we're talking about parking, budget, this might be the chance to get this feedback I got from the public. So making loading zones more clearly loading zones. So the subtle green sign that's 16 foot up in the air in the sky is hard to recognize. People also saying that the loading zones, parking spaces on Elliott Street. I mean, this is very specific, so I could also email this to you if that would be helpful, just these specifics. But people wanting clear signage. That seems like the cheapest of the things that the feedback I got. The other suggestions were parking garage beautification and like whether it's more cleaning or murals. And the other thing was free parking on Sundays and for the first 15 minutes when you're just running in somewhere, like to the library. Now, my concern is that if we have free parking on Sundays, that means that that's going to reduce the revenue. This was the concern I brought up last year when we talked about this, when we're not even quite getting the revenue to make this, to break even. So what we would need to do in order to accommodate that would be to increase the prices during the week. But that's something that I'm curious if other folks here have heard a continued demand for free parking on Sundays. This was something that we heard a lot of interest in a year ago. Yeah.
I can tell you that I think for a while being understaffed sort of extended that Sunday free parking for a lot of people. However, I did see it, I'm believing it was the new hire out patrolling on Sunday. And I don't know how recent that is, that he's been out there. I think that will probably produce a positive result for only the parking fund. I think anybody who is trying to skate by is no longer going to skate by, and I think that word will get out. You know, free parking on Sunday. I'm not a fan of kind of trying to rethink that at the moment. I'd love to see it go like another cycle before we rethink it. I mean, I always liked the fact that we had free parking downtown. Don't get me wrong, but we have a lot of residential people down there who on Sunday just kind of pull into a spot on Main Street and leave it. Any business that's open on Main Street, you know the drill. If you can't park, you just keep going someplace you can. So I don't want to hurt our retailers. With regards to overall park, I don't hate Oscar's sort of idea about kind of reweighting and maybe upping the cost of parking in a more popular lot. And I think that there are other ways other than signage, although I hear and echo what Isaac says about the loading zones. One of the things I appreciated about the change was in front of my business, there were 3 spaces that you couldn't park in for a lot of, and that's a lot of our downtown. Now it's just reduced to 1 space, and that seems to be working fine. And we don't seem to be getting delays on deliveries, but having that somehow designated a little clearer for people who do just kind of pull in thinking it's a parking spot, and the sign is 10 feet off the ground, so people don't necessarily look up. I don't profess that to be an excuse, but it is an explanation as to why people just don't. We're all kind of dogs. We just see everything at eye level, right? I mean, just my suggestions. I mean, it is parking. There's nothing attractive, nothing sexy about it, but it does. It sort of, we would like it to pay for itself very much. So maybe some of these suggestions aren't bad ideas.
So, John, let me ask you, what's the right time, and maybe it's now, to talk about this more general feedback about the parking system?
Yeah, it'd be great, since a lot of these suggestions, they're great, but they would take a certain amount of staff work to put them together for your next meeting. So it'd be great to get 3 head nods on us putting time and effort into exploring these things, because if there's not interest on a majority of the board to explore them, then we could spend that time on other things. But
so what do you have?
So I have add a line for additional signage. And we'd have to come up with an estimate and figure out what that would look like.
Can I just drop something in? Just literally, like, I'm trying to think about like another sign, right? I mean, signs are great. I'm just not convinced that they work the way we would like them to work. And is it just because they're hanging on a wall that you walk past to get to a parking kiosk? You know, is it better on the 05301s to say, you know, there's a little sign that just knowing that if you park here and here, if you intend to stay in our downtown for a little longer, like you should go to the parking garage. Parking is going to cost you $3, but it's for the whole day. You know, something along those lines. But like at a point of purchase, like right before you make that purchase, if they say, well, you know, they might not do it, but then it plants the seed. Sorry, it plants. I'll talk to you for a minute. My back's always
That's
to
okay.
now. I think at a point of purchase would be a good idea. And also, is there a mechanism for the app to kind of say, you know, if you're going to park at 05301, hey, before you park here, if you're going to spend more than 2 hours in our downtown, consider going to the parking garage where you can stay for 5 hours for the same amount of money. And I'm just trying to think that might be a more effective way of letting people know that there are other places to park where you can stay longer and not be hassled by parking people.
I would imagine that those are the sorts of things that, you know, the staff could think through and come up with. But I think the question that John is raising is, do we want the staff to spend time putting together some sort of budget line for this?
So before it looks like you have five.
Yeah, I do.
And would you read us all five and then we
Sure.
can do some triage?
A line for signage. Oh, it's actually, and you were talking about loading zone striping. That could be an additional cost. I don't know where that would fall. Additional cleaning of transportation center, I heard. Free parking on Sundays, free parking first 15 minutes, and re-weighting of fees by different lots, which would be a change in rates. We'd have to do ordinance change on that one.
So yes.
Just to throw in on some of those there, last year, if you remember, we did significant review of signage, and there was a lot of signage change that happened last year. So that's happened. I think it's all happened at this point. Rebalancing fees is something we actually spoke about last year, about looking at different lots and where people primarily park, or the lots that people want to park in. And that at that point was decided not to move forward on that. One thing we changed, for example, from comment we had, was the ability in the new system to have permits for different lengths of time. So like we have the opportunity to have monthly permits now instead of just quarterly and annually permits. And for cleaning, just so you're aware, in the staffing and that, we do have a 40-hour person from DPW that does do cleaning throughout the parking garage. So they're there every day. And that's a change. That was I don't know if that was last year, but I'm getting ahead now. So that was last year too. So we have made some significant move in a lot of those areas coming in from last year. If that leads into anything for you there.
Thank you. Yes. The things on that list that I'm most interested in are if there are opportunities for rebalancing that would be better for us. And then the question of signage, I think I have reservations about putting fees on signs because that we might want to change them. So, but and maybe this sign exists and I just don't see it. It's entirely possible because I walk up and down Elliott Street so much, but sort of long-term economy public parking style signs that direct people specifically to the parking garage. I've always liked the idea of, I think the more we can get that used, the better it'll be in all sorts of ways. And that is a thing I look for when I go to places. If there's a public parking sign leading me to a parking garage, I'll often follow it. So I think those are the two things on the list I would put higher on my list. The free parking on Sundays, I'd like to see the parking break even for a year before we do something like that. But those are my thoughts. Other board members?
No, it's over there.
No?
For the rebalancing, I guess in my brain, I'm just wondering where that would be because we already have High Grove. From my memory, the changes when we changed the zoning was that High Grove switched to 55 cents an hour, and the transportation center is also cheaper. So I think that the highest use areas we have are already the more expensive.
Oh, definitely. I'm just thinking
Yeah.
we look at usage and that places that are still higher proportional usage, so if it's still that Harmony Lot is always full,
Okay.
we increase by another 5 or 10 cents and we make that up somewhere that's underused and we get a better spread of usage and maybe a little more revenue.
Okay.
That's just the...
I think I'm mid-ground on that. I don't think we should do free parking Sunday right now. If people want pull-in spots in front of the library, I think they should consider the pull-in spots in front of USPS that are 15 minutes. Or that could be one sign that says there is free parking around the back. And because there are a couple of free 2-hour parking spots in the municipal lot for library. So far as I would imagine that people would say, haha, it's free 15 minutes, like, they're not gonna catch me. And I would defer to Jeremy insofar as like how much that stretch of Main Street gets patrolled relative to the lots. To me, it seems like a great way that 15 minutes would stretch into longer, and I do respect that people should not have to pay for parking to run and drop off a book and come out, but there is free parking around the back already.
Well, there's even, I mean, just.
Parking over here.
I was gonna say, this whole road.
That's what I'm trying to say.
is parking.
That's what I'm referring to.
Right.
Yeah.
And for the library specifically, there is the pull-in book drop-off in the parking lot,
So I'm Sunday and 15 mins. I think it's not a good choice for where we're at right now, but I do respect the public energy that's coming from it, and I understand the argument to be made for making policy changes that could make people less annoyed about the service they're buying. To me, really, I think what stands out, because cleaning transportation center, I'm sure, is a never-ending pit. And insofar as us trying to figure out how to not see a deficit in the parking fund, I don't, unless there's like really clear, like, oh my gosh, here's a problem, but I kind of assume we would be hearing that from the PD if there were. I do think specifically loading zone striping could be more effective than signage. That is my one thought, is the striping could be more effective than signage, because when I see striping on the ground, I'm like, oh crap, I'm not supposed to park there. And if people want to consider rebalancing fees to see if there would be potential for added revenue there too, sure. So for me, I think it's the loading zone striping, the rebalancing revenue. I think, Peter, what you were mentioning about some of these messagings coming through the app, I'm sure that could be great, but I feel like our department probably has very minimal input on asking the app to change their interface in terms of saying, here's what you're paying here versus here's what you could pay there.
It's a question we could ask.
Yeah.
I suspect also we have minimal control.
I have a question. So for
Yes.
clarity's sake, parking is now totally in police department.
Yes, ma'am.
There was the crossover with DPW and Darren doing the whole reworking of the signs. That was brilliant. But now it's all your baby.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have one question I forgot to ask. The BTC rental revenue.
Yep.
We talked about that a little. How are
Yeah,
you feeling
so
about that?
Pete Lynch has been working really hard to get that increased, so I think you see a modest increase in there. I think if he can do more, we would, but this
Oh,
is
of course,
probably a
but-
conservative, hopefully a conservative estimate on that.
Okay.
So.
Did it feel like you heard enough from the board on the prioritization there?
No, not really. So,
Okay.
from some view, but like to get like 3 head nods, like what are the things we should focus our time
I
on?
think additional signage, more along the lines of what Oscar mentioned, like just signs, you know, with a P here, public parking here, that maybe directs people to the parking garage. You know, I think investigating on that is a good one. I can tell you that when the striping thing, like one of the most popular parking spaces in town is right in front of my store, and that's the striped place because that's always open. So I don't know how much of a deterrent that is. So maybe.
But they can't claim ignorance. I think that's the point, is they can't say, you confused us, we didn't know we weren't allowed to park here.
Well, yeah, but then you can always just say, but just read the sign, it says right there. So maybe lowering the sign would be a more cost-effective way of doing that, if that's a possibility.
Okay.
Okay,
So I'm hearing you'd like to see something for signage, maybe loading zone striping, and look at reweighting fees by different lots.
So does that sound like something we can get some head nods on?
Frankly, I don't think that signage is going to increase revenue. I think it might increase user experience.
I think that's probably.
I'm looking at it from an expense standpoint. We would need to add an expense
See?
for that.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
I can get behind loading zone striping and in looking to see if rebalancing could help revenue.
One clarification about loading zone, loading zones are usually just a set 9 to 11.
Yeah.
And then if it's striped after 11, nobody's parking there.
Yeah.
So I'm not on board for the striping. Just for those reasons, I also don't think it works.
It's a good point.
Yeah,
Then
the
put
sign,
me down for rebalancing, because that's
the
all I
signs
care
are
about.
tricky in those areas too, because the trucks hit the lower signs, so.
Name one person that's hit a
I'm
sign.
just saying.
All right, I'm still interested, not necessarily in doing the signs, but if we're talking about what we're asking staff to look at, I'm interested in what we need to add for signage and the rebalancing question.
I'm all in for the signage.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm in for rebalancing.
I feel like I'm hearing signage and rebalancing.
I think those are the
I
easiest.
live on a
thing.
dirt road. I never come to town except for when I go to these meetings.
Amanda,
I'm
you're-
just
That's not helpful.
All right, why don't we start there?
just getting a little
Okay.
patchy.
All right.
Great.
Do you need anything else?
No, sir, I think.
Okay.
And let's hear from the public. Questions? Yes, Heidi, then Ivan, then Marta.
Heidi Fisher, District 7. I have one question and a comment. My one question is, when I look at the revenue side of the budget, it looks like actuals in 24, 25, and 26 for parking meter revenue were all in the 300 plus, 350, 351,000, 360,000, 397,000. The budgeted fiscal year 27 number is 600,000. And prior years were also quite high, and then each of those years, the revenue was actually only in the 300s. So I would love to know, why are we budgeting 600,000 when it's been 300 and something for the last 3 years? So that's my question. My comment is, it's interesting to listen how it's all talking about the revenue and all that kind of stuff, which is very important, but not thinking at all about the users, or it feels like that way. And I've stood here before and said, I don't understand the parking system. I still cannot get it to work. And I have to say that I can no longer count how many people have said to me the exact same thing, and that they don't come to town because they get tickets because they can't understand how to use the system. And I've had people who say, you know, I go to Northampton, I go to Keene, I go to Worcester, I go to this town, I go to that town. I can figure out how to use their systems. I cannot figure out how to use Brattleboro's. And I agree with that. I still cannot figure out how to use Brattleboro's system. I think that's still an issue.
Thank you, Heidi. I will, so on the meter revenue side, last year, well, this current year is the first one since we changed our fees in a big way.
This one being 26?
26, yes. And 26 actuals, they're below budget, but at 3/4 of the year through, we're on pace for 550K in revenue. That's 530, something like that.
500, yeah.
So I think we're in the ballpark with the new fees. We did bring down the revenue about 40,000 from last year. We may still end up high, but I think we're hoping that with the new hire, we will do better there.
Yep.
And then the comment about the user experience, I mean, I don't disagree. I think it's a difficult app to use. I do use it. At this point, I personally am acclimated to it and use it pretty constantly. But I agree, it's not ideal. So that's definitely something we should be talking about. Isaac?
This is one of the things that signage could help with, and already the signage with the, the different 05302, 05303, it's made it easier for me when I see these big signs. So I think more signage does contribute, it does help. And one of the things that signage could do is saying, hey, like an arrow to parking kiosk with, you can take your quarter, and you can pay with quarters still, right? You can still pay with quarters at the kiosks, but people need to know where the kiosks are, because you wouldn't necessarily always see that. So just like an arrow kiosk for paying for parking, I mean, that could be one way that could be addressed for people who don't want to use the app. I think we could continue to make it easier for people to use the system that we have.
And I do feel like I remember last year telling you that I would be happy to try to help out, and I don't think I did. So we should do that, and maybe that will help.
I know
Thank you.
this would be an additional cost, but we do have parking FAQs on the website. I would imagine that it would not be too much work to put this into a pamphlet on the side of the kiosk. I can't imagine that there would be more significant costs incurred with printing them and keeping them replenished.
Isn't there something, I feel like I remember seeing at downtown businesses, like a one sheet or something like that Seth had made that I think was very similar to that. So maybe next time I'm downtown I should check around a bit. Did you ever stock those at your store, Peter?
I was going to say, you can just check with me.
I'll check with you.
No, I remember that conversation. I don't actually remember seeing a document. I will tell you that I imagine all downtown retailers hear a lot of complaining about the parking. Just to address something Heidi had said, and it's not to take the validity out of your statement, but I've heard that same thing about people not coming downtown to not park. I've heard it from probably 20 or 35 people, 20 or 35 times each. So they find ways to come back downtown when they need something. It's a frustrating system. It's no different than Northampton's. It's no different than Keens. It might use a different app. Maybe that app is more friendly, but I've used them all. I find them all difficult to use and navigate sometimes until you get used to them. It's just a learning curve.
All right, I'm gonna make sure Ivan gets his opportunity.
Ivan Hennessy. Is the maintenance, repair, and replacement sort of schedule or plan for the kiosks sufficient? Because I hear a lot about kiosks not working at all.
Yeah, good point.
Good question. Thank you, Ivan. Yeah, John, can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think there is a maintenance item. I do know that we have some of those in storage to.
There is a plan for starting to replace those.
Okay, so we do have a plan, and we do have a couple in storage at the moment.
Yep.
So.
And if they aren't working, people should report those in.
Yes, definitely.
That would be helpful.
Great, thank you. Marta, and then Dick.
I waited for this just to make the statement that several people asked me to make. I've spoken in the last month and a half with 2 downtown business owners who both still believe that the complication of parking is costing them business. One of them more than the other, but they both have that complaint, kind of out of the blue. I didn't ask. Back in March, I was at a restaurant on Putney Road, and I overheard a table of 4 senior citizen ladies behind me talking about how they don't go downtown anymore because they can't figure out the parking system. My friend's mother, who lives in one of the outside towns and been here all her life, said I heard a story where she doesn't come downtown anymore because she doesn't understand parking, but she really needed to go to the hardware store to get something for an urgent fix in her house. And she was standing outside with her phone and the thing and her money and ended up just crying, and a homeless man came up and said, "Ma'am, can I help you?" And he helped her do that. And I was just so blown away because she said that nice young man hadn't come. I was just standing on the streets bawling my eyes out, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And a funny story, I also told Lisa Marie that just to pass on a compliment. She goes, "I heard that story from the other side. She tried to offer him money, and he wouldn't, like a lot of money for it, and he wouldn't even take it because he helps people with their parking every day." Yeah, so I just wanted to remind people that I work in tech. I'm not a stupid person. I didn't know until like 3 weeks ago that you can't put a space on the app in your license plate. It has to be all one. So if anybody has a space on the app for their license plate, you'll get a ticket. And I wanted to point out, just for food for thought, not to be discussed necessarily tonight, but just keep in the back of our minds. At a meeting, I don't remember if it was a select board or a town meeting a couple years ago, somebody pointed out that, we could just get rid of all of the paid street parking and make it 2 hour and see what happens, because when we're running a deficit in parking and we're losing business and people from downtown, maybe at least some, like the street spots, should just be flat out 2 hours, and we have plenty of like blue P public signs pointing towards the lots or at least the garage. It's just really sad whenever I go to a meeting or event outside, and hear somebody or it comes up that they don't go to Brattleboro anymore. It makes me really sad.
Thanks, Marta. It's worth talking about more. There are challenges with that idea just because, yeah, but worth talking about. Thank you. Dick, you were next, I think.
I'm going to talk fast. I'm getting frostbite here. A couple of things. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've removed a lot of paid parking in town. Great example is right out the door. We used to have parking meters here. I think you have to reconsider putting paid parking back here and other places that you've removed it. When the chief talked about the 7 days, what cost $18,000 for the free parking, where it used to be 3 days for a Holly Days, Holly Nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now it's a whole week. That's serious money. I think you should reconsider the price of the permits. When I look at, it's $80,000 year to date, you're not even at 50%. Maybe a different strategy would be to lower the permit prices to get more people to get a permit. A different strategy. Say, okay, well, they're enticing me to come back to town. We have more people, prominent business people, that park outside the parking system and walk in. And we need to do something about that. And if that means expanding further out, then we need to make sure, and certainly we're understaffed, about getting people ticketed or saying, it's 2 hours, which I think it is on Canal Street or wherever it is. We got a deficit budget here. I think the Brattleboro, at the Transportation Center, the municipality, I don't know what the breakdown is, I see a number, but I know the municipality should be paying a significantly more amount of money for the rental space that they have in the Transportation Center than probably what's in this line item. And if somebody could give me that breakdown of, I think there's 2 rental spaces in there right now. And so if you could give me the breakdown but I think the municipality, which has a significant space, should be paying a lot more money. The parking system is, shouldn't be running a deficit, it should be running a surplus. And so, and I make a suggestion to you, is to possibly doing a year parking permit. So instead of going to the meter, you pay whatever number that is, an arbitrary number, whatever you come up with, and I keep that in my car, and when I go to park someplace, I put that in my window. I've prepaid my parking for the year, whether I use it or not. Kind of like being a member at a golf course, and if it rains for 6 months, I only get to play for a month, they've got my money. And so that might be something you want to think about, so people could buy a yearly pass and park where they want. You put a fee attached to it, and you go, that way they don't have to fool around with the app, and you have the money in hand, whether they come downtown or not. And I agree with you with not eliminating Sunday parking at this point. And I'm going to ask, but I think all of the kiosks are working. That would be good to know.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you.
Is that accurate? Are all the kiosks as of today?
That is my understanding. I don't know of any that aren't.
Yeah.
And we did deploy extra kiosks last year.
Right.
And we do have, we already do have annual permits for Elm, Harris, High Grove, Spring, and the Transportation Center. So.
And are those good? Does that permit let you park in any one of those lots, or are you buying a permit per lot?
No, the Elm Street lot permit is a single permit. Transportation Center lot permit is a single permit. And then Harris, High Grove, and the Spring Tree lot is a combined permit.
There is something attractive about that idea of just, you put this in your window, you can park in any metered spot in town. We'd have to set the price correctly, but I can imagine people doing it, and it would free people from having to use the app or the system. It would lock in a year's worth of revenue.
I love that idea.
A couple of things to consider, though. I mean, so if you can park anywhere downtown, can you just park it and leave it? Or are you still handcuffed by the 2-hour, 3-hour limits? I mean, I think if it's going to work, then you have to be handcuffed by that. It's not a terrible idea, but
Yeah.
I'm just throwing, like, as we're thinking about this is not a free-for-all.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if it's occupy a space 24/7 every day of the year, that would be an expensive permit.
Yeah, I think the year-long permit is a great idea, and what you're saying, Peter, make it like a 2 hours, any spot,
Well, I think
anywhere
wherever
in
you
town,
park.
and
So
even
if
a dirt road driver like me would, I'd buy one, not to have to break out my quarters or.
No, you wouldn't.
So you're saying, depending on where you park, you would just be subject to those rules? So if it's a
Yeah.
3-hour lot,
I mean,
it's 3
that's
yeah.
cool. I gotta be downtown. I'm gonna go to Brown and Roberts. I'm gonna be in there for an hour and a half. That you're good. I'm gonna go to Brown and Roberts, and then I'm gonna go around. I'm gonna be downtown for 4 hours. Then no, you can't park at that space for longer than 2 hours. That's the limit. So if we're gonna design a permit like that, which again, don't hate it. I don't dislike it. Charge accordingly. I don't know what sales are. I think we're just I know we're sort of spitballing ideas, and that's just the idea. That's the way we run our meetings. We have these conversations, live. But it is a consideration. And again, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think we have to kind of adapt it to wherever. If you want to go use that permit to park in the parking garage, stay as long as you like.
Right.
Preston lot, whatever the limit is there. That's also a long-term lot, though, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
That sounds like an additional head nod that the board would have to decide to make.
I would love it if John looked into that, in addition to our other priorities. in
That
the
would just be
parking
adding
scheme.
another permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it could either be something where, hey, January is parking permit month and you have to get it for the year, or it could be something that's just rolling. I bought mine October 1st. It's good through October 1st of next year. So there are a lot of details to
I mean,
think about.
you can just scale it to whatever we're doing now.
But I feel like we're at least seeing 3 and probably more head nods. So that's an interesting idea. Thank you, Dick. Any other comments from the public?
Do that in your spare time.
Seeing none, there's no action needed by the board, so I think Chief Evans, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
And there is one more motion remaining.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Peter's moved to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0, 9:43 p.m. Thank you to Seth and BCTV and members of the public and everyone else. And John.
Oh, we need to.
Yeah, I already have.
Okay, so do we have?
We don't have that, but we could print it right now. It's on the back of it.
Okay.
Like we could just print it and then.
Let me just ask John. Do we have the thing I need to sign for the?